Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Michael Barnes. I'm the Director of Planning for the county. We do our business meeting at the beginning of the year, so we're going to do that bit of business right now. Just want to also make sure for those, since the first meeting, Jennifer Tevendale is our county attorney for this body. And I also want to thank Carolyn Schaefer for being our recording secretary. Can we have a call for quorum, please?
Yes. Ms. Firehawk,
Present.
Mr. Carazana,
Here.
Mr. Murray,
Here.
Ms. King.
Here.
We have Mr. Claiborne and Mr. Moore are both out tonight, and we have one vacant seat.
Thank you. The second item is a chance for public comment on matters that are before the commission but are not on tonight's agenda for the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the planning commission about other items not on the agenda? Okay. Then I'd like to move to the third item, which is the elections of officers of chair and vice chair. I think we should open the order for the chair first, please. There a nomination? I will not be the one making this.
I will nominate my fellow planning commissioner, Garzana, to take.
There a second?
Second.
Great. Motion has been made and seconded. May we have a roll, please?
Yes. Ms. King,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Carazana,
Aye.
and Ms. Firehawk.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay. We need to have a nomination for vice chair. Do I hear any nominations?
I would like to nominate Karen Firehawk.
I'd second that.
All right.
Call
Can
roll.
All right.
I get the roll? We have a
Mr. Carazana,
aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
and Ms. King.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't take a vote from her because she's not, I'm not. Okay, Ms. Firehawk, will you want to vote? I have to because of the food. Pardon? Do you accept the nomination?
Yes, ma'am, I do. It's a surprise, but sure. I'll do it again.
Okay.
Did it
A lot of experience.
before.
Thank you for accepting that. Okay, just going through some other order of business. We need to discuss any planning commission rules and procedures. So Mr. Barnes, have there been any changes?
There have been no changes since last year. It's the exact same set of rules and procedures.
Yeah, we do need a motion to accept those rules and procedures.
I move to accept the planning commission's 2026 rules and procedures.
Second.
Get the roll.
Yes. Ms. Firehawk,
Aye.
Mr. Carazana,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Ms. King.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we have received a list of vacancies on boards and committees. You should have also had that in your package.
Yes.
Because we're somewhat short-handed, I'm going to motion that we defer the conversation on and selection of those committee assignments until the January 27th meeting. Do I have a motion for that?
I move that we defer.
Have a second?
A second.
Roll.
Ms. King?
Oh.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Mr. Carazana?
Aye.
And Ms. Firehawk?
Aye.
Thank you.
The next one is,
Before we go on, just quickly, the Historic Preservation Committee meets before the next Planning Commission meeting, so if it's all right, I'd like to continue to wrap us for one more
There-
meeting, at least.
and there's a CAC that's, I think it's been covered as well, but
Yeah.
yes, you can.
And
Yeah.
the people who were appointed last year, I think we can just,
Just keep doing it until we have the,
Yep.
next time. Okay.
Thank you.
We do have to review the schedule for 2026, and I would ask Counselor if she can go through the process here. I think it's a dual.
The
Motion.
commission can do one of two things. You can do it in twofold. You could make a motion to adopt the meeting schedule for 2026 and then make a second motion to adopt the resolution, which sets forth the meeting schedule should we have to continue anything due to weather-related events. Or you can do a combined motion.
Do I have a motion to accept the schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussions? No? Roll.
Ms. King?
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
aye.
Mr. Carazana?
Aye.
And Ms. Firehawk?
Aye.
Thank you.
And now we need a motion for the resolution.
Mhm.
A motion to adopt the resolution.
A motion to adopt the resolution for the schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Go ahead.
Ms. Firehawk?
Aye.
Mr. Carazana?
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Ms. King?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to our consent agenda. The new commissioners like to pull the consent agenda, or do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda submitted.
Have a second?
Second.
Secretary, can I get the roll?
Ms. Firehawk?
Aye.
Mr. Carazana?
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Ms. King?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now ready for the public hearing. I'm sure everybody's very excited about. We're open the public hearing for CMA 2024-5 Belvedere Amendment Number 2. And this was an item that was deferred from October 28th, 25. Can we get the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Rebecca Ragsdale, and I'm a planning manager with the Planning Division of Community Development. And I will be joined in this presentation by our Deputy Planning Director, Mr. Kevin McDermott. Unfortunately, Cameron Langell, who is the primary reviewer for this rezoning, couldn't be here this evening, so we are going to cover that item for him. Thank you for that introduction. We're going to walk you through the details, but this is a request to remove an element of the originally approved Belvedere application plan. Belvedere is what we refer to as a neighborhood model district that was approved in 2005. So this is actually the second amendment to it. So that's why it's referred to as Proffer Amendment 2. One of the primary focuses of the amendment is to remove a proffer that we referred to as Proffer 4.2. It's a 100-foot reserved road right-of-way proffer. And with the removal of that proffer, the proposal is that that area would be utilized to add additional units to the Belvedere neighborhood model development. And that's 128 units total. Along with this rezoning are some changes to improve amenities, add greenways, and then provide affordable housing commitments that are in line with our present-day housing Albemarle policy. So that's a very high-level review, and I'm going to go through some of the details. This map here outlines the in blue, getting my laser pointer here. The blue outline are the parcels that we did reference as part of the rezoning. A lot of that acreage is greenway, some of it existing by right zoned R4, and we're going to explain why we've included that. But when we refer to Block 8, and the 100-foot right-of-way, we're talking about this area in here. This provides you the context of where Belvedere is located for those that may be less familiar. It's primarily accessed from Belvedere Boulevard, off Rio Road, and it's surrounded by the Northfields neighborhood, Dunlora, and then developing sections of what's referred to as Dunlora Village, and then of course the Ravenna River runs along the edge of it. Going through some more existing conditions information, Block 8 I'm pointing to here, the dark green areas are referred to as Neighborhood Model Zoning District. This map has the parcels outlined again and showing you where we have, when I refer to the originally approved Belvedere neighborhood model development, it is those green areas. And then when we're saying R4 by right, we're talking about the yellow areas. They are along the edges of the neighborhood model development. The property parcels, all of them proposed for development, are designated neighborhood density residential in the comprehensive plan. And then the floodplain and the Ravenna River areas are designated green space. Jumping ahead to some more details about the proposal, the original neighborhood model was approved for 775 units total. Now, neighborhood model districts, if you recall, get very detailed. And so those 775 units were broken down across a number of blocks within the code of development. But this rezoning is focused on Block 8. But the total number of units possible within the Belvedere neighborhood model district would increase by 128. So it was originally approved roughly at 3.7 dwelling units per acre. So that would increase it to 4.34 dwelling units per acre. That neighborhood density comprehensive plan designation is a recommended 3 to up to 6 dwelling units per acre. So it's still consistent with our comprehensive plan. And then I mentioned it is entirely consistent with the expectations in our housing policy, Housing Albemarle, for 20% of the new units within that 100-foot right-of-way area to also be affordable, and within the new area for the NMD. And I realized we need to orient you to this. I mentioned the neighborhood model district is broken into blocks. We have some exhibits that have highlighted Block 8. And right now, Block 8 also includes the SACA facility that you may be familiar with, and then the neighborhood community building that's under construction. This is the existing Belvedere network of interconnected streets. And then Block 8 is over here. This corridor, the 100-foot right-of-way corridor, additional area, if the proffer is removed, would allow what would be primarily single-family attached units. The proffer was not only on the neighborhood model district area, but it extended over into the R4 area. So that's why the R4 areas are part of the conversation in terms of proffer amendments. This is another close-up image of that. Hopefully our materials explained the area where the additional units could go. It is parallel and along that 100-foot right-of-way, which is from the railroad tracks there. So behind the existing SACA facility, units would face an amenity area and be served by a alley, and the applicant's probably going to go into a lot more detail, but the street in purple would not connect all the way through. They are providing on the application plan some additional um, greenway and shared use path commitments that are really building on the proffers that were included with the original Belvedere rezoning. As part of the original rezoning, the county was dedicated this frontage along the Rivanna River. As part of this rezoning, they will provide shared use paths down and will be able to have better access with this improved application plan to that greenway. And they are providing those necessary easements. They have also made a commitment to provide 30-foot, excuse me, so many numbers to talk about, 30% construction plans for a future, should show up on here. It's not showing up on the slide. There, in addition to what I've shown you on here, there are plans for 30% construction drawing for a shared use path along the Greenway corridor. So there's both connections to improved connections down to the Greenway that the applicants worked closely with our Parks and Rec staff on, and the 30% drawing so we can get closer to constructing that Class A trail improvement along the Greenway. I apologize, that's not showing up. Oh, there we go. There it is. That's potentially a 30 conceptual alignment. So that is an improvement that we expect to occur, and that will be their contribution towards that. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. McDermott now to talk a bit about the transportation analysis and what we considered with the proposal.
Thanks, Rebecca. Kevin McDermott, Deputy Director of Planning. So the applicant did submit a traffic impact analysis along with this rezoning. This slide you see here shows in red the intersections that were analyzed as part of this. And the yellow on there shows some future planned improvements that I'm going to talk about here in a second. But overall, that traffic impact analysis, I did recognize that currently at Belvedere and Rio Road, we see extremely long delays. So right now, to get out of Belvedere, especially to make a left out of there, people are waiting multiple minutes usually to get out of there during the peak hours. In the future, we have these proposed projects that will make improvements at Belvedere and Rio, and also down the road at the Rio John Warner Parkway intersection. I'll show you a figure on those just a second, just to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on there. But following those improvements, the overall intersection at Belvedere and Rio will operate at a level of service B. So those left turns may have slightly longer delays than level service B, but overall the intersection will operate at a level of service B. Their analysis, when they added this additional traffic plus all the future traffic that's coming in from the by right sections of Belvedere and Dunmore Village, shows that that intersection will still operate at a level of service B after the build alternative is recognized. So with the improvements and with all of the new development, overall level of service B at that intersection, the specific left turn movements will have some periods of time when it's operating at level service C and D as well, but we don't consider that failing. So those individual left turn movements would, and coming out of Belvedere and turning from Rio into Belvedere will have slightly longer delays, but overall still be in no failing movements at that intersection. So the TIA also did counts at these other two locations. You can see it at Faro Drive and Butler Drive. This is the connection that provides access over to Dunlora. We were interested to see if a lot of people are utilizing that route out currently instead of going down Belvedere to avoid that problematic intersection. What the count showed is that very few people are utilizing that during the peak hours. So we don't expect a lot of change in that, especially especially once that improvement is in place and people are able to get out of that area much more easily. The Free State Road Bridge, however, does carry significant traffic. A lot of people are leaving Free State Bridge, leaving Free State Road, going across the bridge, which is a one-lane bridge, and using Huntington to get out into the broader network. That looks like about 1,700 vehicles a day is the estimate based on the peak hour counts. So pretty significant number utilizing that. And then I'll quickly move on to the, just to describe the improvements that are going on. This is a concept plan that was provided by VDOT for the designs for these improvements. So here we have Belvedere Boulevard. And what you can see here is this is what we refer to as a green T. And what it does is it creates a protected left turn lane so that people coming out of Belvedere only have to look to the left to see oncoming traffic, and then they are able to move out into this protected lane and accelerate so that they can merge into the southbound traffic of Rio Road. Also, there is the left turn into Belvedere still remains, and that is protected as well. There is a signal you can see here. That signal will operate so that it can stop those north to westbound movements on Rio to allow those people to get in and out much easier. It will not stop the southbound movements because there's no cross traffic that would interfere with coming out with that. So because they can use that acceleration lane, we do not need to stop the southbound Rio Road movements. And then you can also see over here, this is the proposed roundabout at Rio Road and John Warner Parkway. It's a hybrid roundabout, so it has 2 lanes going into it and on the major movements, and then a single lane around the center. But you can see what that is proposed to look like to improve that intersection as well. Both these projects are expected to get underway later this year, so in fall of 2026, and will be completed in a year's time. It's a year's construction time is what they're expecting. So we would expect these to be online and open likely before any of the impacts from this rezoning would hit. That's it.
We just had a couple summary slides, and then we plan to just pause for questions. Anything you would like to come back to? As we mentioned throughout the presentation and included in the staff report, our findings were that this proposal is consistent with the land use and density recommendations of the Places 29 master plan for neighborhood density residential areas and housing Albemarle, as we mentioned. And we also went over the when we were talking about the additional greenway and shared use path improvements, those are in line with some elements of the Places 29 master plan as well. And then, as we typically do, we've noted there would be some increase in enrollment at our county schools associated with the request. So staff has recommended approval of the amendment in terms of our findings, and I will pause there for questions.
Right. Do you have any questions for staff?
Yes, please. What was the, so we're giving up the proffer for the Free State Connector Road extension, correct? So what was the logic about asking for that road in the first place? What were we trying to achieve with that road? And why do we feel that, the staff feel that it may not be necessary any longer?
I'm going to pull up a view of our current comprehensive plan. And you can see here that this dark dotted line, which runs along Rio Road and turns on to Belvedere, is considered a proposed addition to the roadway network. This is from our plan, which was actually approved back in 2011, the Places 29 master plan. And initially, what you can see This is prior to John Warner Parkway being built. And the idea behind all of this was that the county was looking to have a parallel road network to 29 that could carry people from 250. Realistically, at that time, we were looking to go all the way up and eventually connect to Polo Grounds Road and then give us access into the Hollymead development area. So this was supposed to be a major new roadway network that would carry people through the eastern portion of the development area from 250 all the way up to Hollymead and back. So it would have crossed over the Rivanna River and gone along the railroad tracks and connected up there to the Prophet Polo Grounds Road area. It was expected a road like that could carry up to 20,000 vehicles a day. And so that was evaluated in the master plan, in this master plan. And at that time, I think they were starting to realize that maybe that wasn't the best option. You can see in this master plan, they only show the road going and providing access into Belvedere. So it didn't actually cross over in the Rivanna River like the older plans did. As we're looking at that now, we just, for a couple reasons, we looked at the potential costs of a project like that. You're talking likely in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It was close to 100 million to build the Hillsdale crossing of Rio over there on the other side. So something similar to that on this side in today's prices is likely well over $100 million. There'd be significant additional impacts both in Belvedere, because this would be a significant road addition. It would carry a lot of traffic, as well as significant impacts north of the river where we didn't have right-of-way, where we would need to acquire additional right-of-way and rebuild the Polo Grounds Prophet Road area to accept all that traffic. Looking at that, we recognized this project, that road connection has a very low likelihood of getting built. And when we look at the value of that, with the improvements we've done to 29, Hillsdale, we just didn't see the necessity to have a third connection across the river in this location. So when we thought about all those things, the developer has proposed to build a new parallel network to Belvedere within their development. We thought that with that, it would really address a lot of the connectivity concerns and the congestion concerns for the existing roadway network in Belvedere by providing that new road, and also the benefit of having the shared use path connection through there to give people another option. Looking at all that in total, we didn't feel that it was appropriate to continue to hold that 100-foot right-of-way in lieu of that, to look at this different style of development that's proposed here.
Thank you. Second question. So if you go back to slide 6, you'll see that in the critical slopes, you have them marked in different colors of shading. Can you clarify what's going on with the different shading? And in terms of the critical slopes being protected, just to clarify, all the critical slopes marked as critical slopes in the county GIS are proposed to be protected regardless of their shading here, yes or no?
So, I believe that this map is illustrating field run, verified, preserved slopes and managed slopes versus what our GIS is showing, but they have not proposed any impacts to the steep slopes that would not, they've not proposed any exceptions on this application plans. They'll fully comply with the steep slopes overlay district, but I think that's what the distinction is on this.
Okay, so they'll be protecting the steep slopes as they're shown in the GIS. That's what's being proposed. Just for
I
clarity.
think so.
Okay.
It's just showing which ones they actually went out and said, those are definitely.
To be clear, the Greenway Trail that is shown on the edge of this project that's dropping down will disturb some critical slopes, but it's an allowed use. I think it's also where they're directing some of the stormwater infrastructure that they have to, connect down to the floodplains going in that same corridor. but that's all allowed under the code.
Thank you.
a follow-up question to that. So those greenway trails and the greenway space that's already been dedicated, what is the county's current access to that property? How do you get to it?
Well, current access to is really, a lot of it's through the Urbana Trail Foundation, has easements for single track trails in that area. The long range plan is to complement those with a shared use path.
Right, so my question is, how do we get the equipment to the shared use path when we build it?
I think it's an interesting question. It may be through the proposed path that is being constructed here. And we'd have to deal with that during the construction project.
I've noticed that in other recent developed neighborhoods in the county where there are dedicated greenways that the county then accepts ownership of, but the developer never gave us access to. And so I think it's something that we need to be mindful of in this particular application. If they're going to be giving money to a future path, we got to be able to get to it to build it.
No, and it's a good point, and we don't quite have a larger map here to show that, but on the screen here on the right-hand side is where the railroad is. It's a railroad bridge. On the opposite side of that railroad bridge, sort of, again, I'm not going to show it very well, but it's Still Meadows neighborhood. The county does own an easement along the river there and has somewhat limited access, but has access to the public road network. To the downstream side, on the left-hand side here of the slide, we've been working with the adjacent project that's being developed there to get some access down to the river on that spot as well. So I think I appreciate the question, and I think we've been trying to make sure we have adequate access, both for people in the future as well as trying to think about how it might get constructed in the future as well.
And maintenance.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
No, I only had questions about parking, but I think the applicant can probably address that.
And the question I have is around housing. I think I had some other questions that have been asked. And I will hold those for the applicant as well. So I appreciate the thorough presentation, particularly on traffic. I know that there's a lot of concerns about that. And it is, and so actually I do have so Mr. McDermott, you said that the development start or the improvements start in fall of this year, 26. Is the funding in place?
The funding is in place. The contract's actually let already. This is bundled with a group of projects that VDOT is completing around. They've already started construction on some of those, including one out in Crozet. So they're going to be moving on to this location very shortly.
I actually might have another question for Kevin. So one of the things I've noticed along a lot of railways, and since we're proposing development that's been close to this railway, is that a lot of the right-of-ways now are maintained by herbicide. So the trains will come through and spray big clouds of herbicide as they're going through there. And I don't know, do you know anything about, do they make any exceptions as they're going through neighborhoods when they do that? Or do they have a no spray program like VDOT has for certain areas, or how that's managed when they're going through a neighborhood?
Sorry, I don't have information on how the railroad maintains their right of ways. We can look into that and get back to it another time, but we don't have information.
I do have a question about the connectivity of the roadway. So there's a proposal for a public extension as part of this proffer. Are the other roads in Belvedere all public VDOT accepted roads, even though it was noted in the application that they do not conform to VDOT standards?
Yes, well, and anything, there are sections that are still under construction that have not been accepted by VDOT. But the portion of, Belvedere that has been completed, those, roads are all accepted by VDOT. And, VDOT allows certain waivers to some of their standards and they would have approved those waivers in order to allow those roads to be accepted.
If there's no more questions, we'll open for the public hearing and ask the applicant to please give us your presentation. Wasn't me, Franco. That present.
It should, is it opened up on this?
It's open up.
It should be because I have you on the podium.
Let me get
Good evening. My name is Chris Schooley. I'm the Vice President of Land Development at Greenwood Homes. I'm also the President of the Belvedere Neighborhood Association. Every day I wear those two hats, but tonight I only represent the developer. The residents of the Belvedere will speak shortly to represent their perspectives. Because this dual role is often seen by the Belvedere neighborhood as a conflict, we'd like to take a few minutes to note that holding the president role in an HOA is common in our business while projects are under development. You'll recognize many of these neighborhood names. Almost all of them are in Albemarle County and all are under some different stage of current development. Belvedere also has a significant representation on the HOA board. There are 4 seats held by the Belvedere residents of the 7. That is 2 more than any of those neighborhoods. There's a significant amount of representation from the residents of the neighborhood on the board. Belvedere also meets monthly. All the rest of those neighborhoods meet annually. Finally, my term as president will end in September, and a Belvedere resident is likely to be appointed as the next president. We'd next like to highlight neighborhood coordination that's gone through this project. The initial meeting was held back in 2024 at a CAC meeting. The result of that meeting, as noted previously by staff, was that we should do a new traffic impact assessment. That took about a year to finalize that traffic assessment and have VDOT in the county approve it. After that, we set up a meeting. One of the reasons we deferred from the October meeting to meet with the residents at the center at Belvedere. As noted, we have over 100 participants. It was a lively meeting. The recommendation of the meeting that we were able to assess would be to avoid an impact on an HOA property that we previously proposed. There was an extension of Addison Street that was limited because of the street widths in that section, and we needed to provide more parking both for residents and for SACA. Those can be seen here on this graphic. The HOA property is in the top left here, and the extension of Addison Street, here's Addison Street, previously would have connected this street all the way along the project. We removed that connection because there was an impact on the HOA property here. And as noted, the street sections on Faro Drive West and Addison Street are very narrow, and parking would have had to been removed to safely add more traffic. We also talked with Saka. The existing parking that is on Colvin Alley is currently for Saka only. Many of the neighbors on the Cole Street Faro Drive West section have limited on-site parking. So we have met with Saka and requested to expand their existing lot to build a new lot on a parcel that we own next to that. In lieu, Saka would allow this parking to be shared for the neighborhood. The preliminary response from Saka has been very positive, and we have included the parking improvements in this area with this proposal. As many of you know, if you've ever been to the Saka Fieldhouse during an event, parking is a challenge. This should add over 70 parking spaces that would, during the week, would be allowed anybody to use, and then Saka events would alleviate some of that congestion. This is a complicated project. The 100-foot right-of-way reservation does not extend over the Fairview property. It only extends over the Belvedere property, including across the R4. So that is shown in red here. The yellow area is the area we are proposing for Block 8 rezoning. But as noted, we have committed voluntarily to extend the 20% affordable housing to the blue area as well that is in R4. That will add another 16 affordable dwelling units to the project. The rationale was everything that was impacted by the 100-foot right-of-way should also be beholden to the county's affordable housing policy. All of the affordable housing, as noted, would be at housing Albemarle standards with the 60% AMI rule. Greenwood Homes is currently and through 2026 will deliver approximately 150 affordable dwelling units in the area. The proposal for Belvedere is to use our 2/1 unit. This has been built in Glenbrook and Crozet. These are the units here. What it is a 2-story townhouse with a basement below. The basement is a 2-bedroom apartment. That is the floor plan to the left. As you can see, there's 2 bedrooms in the back, a shared living space and a kitchen. And then there are 2 stories above, which can be 3 to 4 bedroom units. There are no garages, there are on-street parking, and we provide additional parking on our site plan to account for the required parking spaces for these units. This product is also going to be built at Granger, Brook Hill Square, and in the city at South First Street within 2026. To provide context on how the 2/1 units mix within a neighborhood, this really provides an ideal representation. On the left are standard market rate townhouses with garages below. Across the street, you can see the 2/1 affordable housing units integrated into the streetscape. There's no difference in the product line, and it fits seamlessly within the community. We'd also like to wrap this up on this image. This is what we are proposing for Belvedere. This is what the density would look like. There are townhouse units with 2/1 units mixed in to meet the county's affordability requirements. We'll integrate in with amenities. And as you can see, in parking on street in most of the places. We're proud of what we do at Greenwood Homes. We build a good house. We build a lot of great neighborhoods throughout Albemarle County, and we're pleased to work with the county to meet the affordable housing requirements. If you have any questions, we have Scott Collins from Collins Engineering, who is available to answer any engineering questions, and we have Carl Holtgren, who can answer any of the traffic questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant?
I have a couple questions. There was a mention of rent units and the restrictions on those related to affordability.
Right.
Is that all in these 2/1s? There's no apartment building that you're planning to
No,
build?
there's no apartment building. It's integrated into the rest of the neighborhood.
And this may be a county question, but I noted in the application narrative that there was a lot of information about how we track that long-term, which feels a little bit like an administrative nightmare for everyone. So I just, feel like it's important to kind of note that, going forward.
There's a process,
Yeah.
there's an annual, confirmation, that, each landlord would need to submit to the county, which is approved.
Yep.
We are entering into a new world because this extends it to 40 and 30 years, 30 and 40 years. This is really what the county signed up for. The development community has met it fairly well. We're excited to be a part of this, because like we mentioned, building 150 units within the area, that's probably the largest nonprofit in the area of building affordable housing.
So how does that work? I think I'm having trouble understanding how we apply, and I guess it's just because the proffer, is gonna convey with the land, but I'm not familiar with a situation where you apply the proffer to something that's not being rezoned.
Would you like me to go ahead and answer?
Yep.
Sure. So technically, what we've described is a rezoning process. So the R4 area was subject to a proffer. The only way to change a proffer is through the rezoning process. So that is a component of this rezoning. And they, volunteered right away and offered to cover that area that they're adding with the housing Albemarle provision. So we think that is in line with the policy.
And
It's-
additionally, I'd add that you can proffer stuff that's off-site, off the property. The proffers don't have to be restricted to the parcel
Sure.
that's being
Yeah.
rezoned.
And
Sure.
keep in mind, there is affordable housing as a bonus density within R4. The Glenbrook project is part of that affordability. So it has no proffer specifically, but it's on the
bonus.
site plan.
Any other questions?
Yes. Oh, yes. So do you have an idea of the balance of how many of the affordable units will be for rent versus for sale?
We'll open it up to the market. We've had some in Dunlore Park that were sold. That's great. It's a bit of a thin line to be able to find someone to purchase a 2/1 unit, which has to be purchased together. They're not condos, so you'd have to buy both units at that AMI. So primarily, we would expect that they would be rental. But so far, we've had good luck for the ones that we built and the ability to rent them fairly quickly.
And have you considered engaging with a housing trust?
We have, Victorian Heights, we worked with the land trust on those 8 units, and we think there's a lot more potential to work with them. Belvedere in particular seems like it would be a good fit.
Yeah, so I just want to dig into the parking for the new units a little bit more. So can you tell me how many bedrooms will be in each unit? And it might vary, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and then how much parking are you providing? So is it, like sometimes it's one space per unit? Is it 2 spaces? And then I'd like to get a sense, it's obvious that because Saka is providing some more parking, obviously when people are having events in the neighborhood or friends over or whatever, they need more parking than what's provided with units. So can you just kind of go through all that with me and the rest of the commission, obviously?
So we will effectively build 2 different product lines
Right.
with this proposal. One is a standard townhouse with a garage. Each one of the townhouses will have a 2-car rear-loaded garage, and then we will have a driveway that is deep enough to fit 2 cars. So effectively, you could park 4 cars on a townhouse lot if your garage is empty enough that you can park 2 cars inside,
Okay.
and then you could park 2 cars behind it. And then we have on-street parking. So the other product type we have is the 2/1 mentioned. Each one of the 2/1s provides, I think it's 3.25 parking spaces. So there's 2 spaces that are generally committed to the upstairs unit, 1 space to the lower unit, and then a visitor spot for every 4 units.
And so how many bedrooms are in the lower unit then, if
2.
they have 1?
2.
So they have two bedroom units, 1 parking space. The top is 2 bedrooms, but they have 2 parking spaces, 2.5.
Three bedrooms
Three.
upstairs.
Yeah, and it's got a weird math in there with a quarter space, so I guess that's
Yeah, the quarter
Like
space is
some over-
is the visitor space. So you
Yeah.
have one visitor space for every four. So
one
there-
for every four.
So
okay.
basically downstairs has one parking, upstairs has two. But then, of course, each one of the places where we built this, including Belvedere, there's on-street parking. On-street parking is trickier to get than it was 20 years ago. Sight lines have made that very difficult. You'll see it in a lot of places where it's marked off. Our site plan, which I have here, Mr. Collins has worked on this already. You can see on-street parking in this area that's already noted. There's on-street parking on Colbert Street. And then we have some, parking in the alley. The Saka parking, this is their existing parking lot, this upper bay. So we would be basically doubling the existing parking lot that they have. And then this parking lot is on our parcel, which is about 22 additional spaces. There's 15 spaces behind that would be open for the entire community. And then with the on-street parking, that's where we feel like it's at least 70 off-lot parking spaces. And we'll work out an arrangement with Saka. There were some that they would need to have committed for their staff that's in the building, but overall, it's a flex arrangement.
Okay, thank you.
Question. How you doing, Chris? So one more question on the parking, just so that I'm clear in your numbers. So when you say that 3.25, are you counting in street parking in that, or is that not in the equation?
As street parking is part of the quarter, not part of
It's part of the quarter, so it's not part.
Right.
Okay. And so I can see where in this illustrative, you can see some street parking.
Right.
Along one of the streets, but you're saying on the back, there's also.
So we're going to be able
street
to,
parking?
there's parking, each one of the 2/1 units, to
Right.
go back to the 2/1 units
Yeah,
here.
street.
You can see on this is the front side of the 2/1 units.
But there's no street parking in that back.
That's right.
The single parks in the front, okay, and then. Got it, okay.
Park in the back.
It's parking is tricky, and it gets trickier, I think, with townhouses because more people have stuff after they downsize in their garage. So it pushes their parked cars out of the garage into their driveway and into the street. The other thing is that it's important to make sure that the driveways are deep enough they can park on without having, in this area, it would be an alley. A lot of times we have this sidewalk really kind of gets in the way of being able to park in the driveway without extending out. So we admit that attached product parking is tricky, and it's not just this neighborhood, every neighborhood. So we provide absolutely as much as we can, and we push on the site distance issues to make sure we get everything we can from VDOT.
The question, and I need to keep you up there. I have another question for you. So the application didn't ask for any modifications to the parking. So in your evaluation, are they meeting the county parking policy?
So they must meet the parking policy or come back through to get a special exception. This is a concept plan, so I personally have not reviewed the parking calculations. I'm covering from Cameron, but he didn't raise any issues with them not being able to meet the minimums.
So my other question for you is on the housing, the affordable housing. So, and I understand it's complicated and they shift over to block 4, but they're all in one location. So they've been, they're at least from what I'm seeing in here, and obviously I get that these are preliminary, but it seems like they're all going in one section of the block.
Let me show in a little bit more detail, Mr. Carranza. This shows it, if you look at this block right here, this shows the proposed plan. The 2/1 units would be the end units because it's easier for us to provide the offsite parking, and it allows us to get a side entry into those units. And then the internal units would be a townhouse. So we mix it up, and we call them sticks of townhouses. We can mix up the 2/1, so it's not.
You're mixing up the types.
Right.
What I'm asking is, are you putting all of your affordable housing in one section?
No, it will be mixed up.
That will be mixed up throughout.
Yeah, and it's already, I don't know if we have a plan here. So this where it says phase 4, this is the by right section of phase 4 that's currently under development. it has some affordable housing already included, but based on bonus density requirements. That's a section of the 2/1 units, and this is a section of 2/1 units.
Okay.
So sometimes it's one stick, sometimes it's mixed up within a stick, but we don't just put all the affordable housing units in like one corner of a neighborhood. We
I
integrate
think
as
what
much
was
as-
confusing, if you go to the section that showed block 4.
Yeah.
No, the block,
Next
it
block.
shows block 4.
This.
Block 8,
No, that's block 8. That one was here.
Okay.
So,
phase 4.
so proposed 20% affordable housing for units within 100%, 100-foot reserved area. Okay, but what I'm hearing is that they're gonna be dispersed throughout there, and they're not just gonna be like within one section, and there you're gonna have all 16 of your.
We have approximately 40 ADUs over a section that has about 140 townhouses. So we'll mix those 40 up within the 140.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, because I didn't quite understand that, the proposal. Is there any other questions?
So some of the, I got some comments that talked about the potential impact of putting houses so close to the railway and the noise that might be coming from the railway. What are you going to be doing to address impacts from sound that may be coming from there? And then also, and this, as I said, it's just as much a question for the county. I know Norfolk Southern just got sued last December for toxic herbicides drifting from their roadway into adjoining properties. And so when you look at the impact of, whether trail derailments or other things that could happen there, how are we making sure that we're doing this in a safe way, being close to the railway?
So regarding trail derailments, we don't have a grading plan here, but all of the houses are probably 30 to 40 feet above the rail line. The rail line is really depressed in this section. Derailments can really get out of hand, I'm sure, but there is a certain barrier based off of the topography that the railway is below. Your question about herbicides is a good one. I think we often, take a look at that rail area that's between Old Ivy and Ivy. That's very prominent in Charlottesville. And sometimes you see it get sprayed, but most of the time it doesn't. But I think the county's response would be the same as ours, that we would like to look into it and better understand what the risks were going to be. As far as the sound, this is not the coal train that comes from Crozet. This is I'm not a rail expert, but it's less frequent than where we have in the other areas. So we haven't heard that it's a significant issue in Belvedere over the years. We have a lot of residents who may disagree with that point later tonight. But if we do find it's an issue, then we can always add soundproofing and change windows.
Please speak into some of them can't hear you, so if you can speak into the mic.
So I think if we find that it's an issue, there are methods that we could use within the home building to minimize the soundproofing and window changes.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
We're going to open it for public comments, and I have a list. So I'm going to read 2 names at a time, so somebody can, that you're on deck. And if you're not on this list, you'll have an opportunity to speak as well. I'll just remind everybody, there's a lot of people on the list. So if you hear something that's the same comment you're going to make, don't necessarily feel that you have to make it again. We've also received a lot of emails. If you agree with a comment, please just raise your hand, and no clapping, no shouting, please. Keep decorum. And I apologize if some of these names are hard to read, just the way they're written. Denise Kircher. Okay. And Terry Beesvert is on deck.
Good evening. I'm Denise Kirshner, one of the early homeowners in the Belvedere neighborhood in the Rio Magisterial District, and I am before you tonight regarding ZMA 2024-0005 to ask that you do all that you can do to preserve the design and intention of the Belvedere neighborhood. When I built my home in 2010, Belvedere was one of, if not the first neighborhood model district, which promised a new urbanism featuring walkability, abundant green spaces, preservation of the topography, with a nature by design that would include an organic farm. It featured a town center with shops, a civic core with neighborhood amenities, and architecture that assured diversity of materials, colors, elevation, and landscaping with a built form with authentic architectural styles reflected in roof lines, eaves, and design appearance. The original developers shared this vision with potential homeowners, and buying a home there was not simply buying a house, it was buying into the vision and the lifestyle that the neighborhood promised. With each subsequent developer, and we now are on our third developer, there has been an erosion of that vision, and the original build-out of 775 units, as you heard tonight, has now been expanded to 903, while promised elements of the design and livability of the neighborhood have virtually been abandoned. We are aware that our governing covenants and restrictions, particularly Article 2, Section 2, permits the addition of properties to the original scope of the neighborhood and thereby increases the number of lots, and the current developer has done that several times. We support the construction of affordable housing, whether it be small homes or carriage house apartments. Many of us built those apartments on our property initially to foster variability and affordability. But the original covenants and codes and development, which were last updated in 2014, do not support the rows of townhouses that dominate the newer acquired blocks being developed. This requested rezoning brings with it also a shift from creating a community of homeowners to creating opportunity for investors. You can preserve the neighborhood design and intention of the Belvedere Historic District, NMD, by not moving forward on the rezoning of Block 8 parcel in Belvedere. Thank you.
And so we have Terry and then Laura Taylor is on deck. Please state your name and.
Yes, my name is Terry Bosford. I live in Belvedere, a part of the Rio Magisterial District. Regarding the proposed rezoning and development in Block 8, I'd first like to address Tenant 2 of the 12 tenants outlined in the County Neighborhood Development Document adopted by the Board of Supervisors in 2001, which states, makes open space integral to overall design so that residents and workers can walk to a public park, experience preserved and natural areas, and enjoy public gathering spaces. We note that there are many parallels to this tenant in the original plan for Belvedere as outlined in this glossy brochure so many of us were given when we were considering purchasing there. In the section of this brochure entitled, "This is Belvedere Sustainability," among other things it says, and I quote, "Every home is within 250 feet of green space because we believe nature is something to be protected, preserved, and most of all, enjoyed." An additional tenant in the county document 10 states, adapts development to site terrain so that natural topography can be preserved. As Belvedere residents, we have already seen both of these tenants have been violated, if not outright discarded. In fact, we're already past the tipping point. I know I speak for my neighbors when I say that so many of us thought we were buying into a place with a respect for nature, with a proportionate number of green spaces for the number of houses being built. But instead, what we got was clear cutting of many old growth trees, clusters of tall, dense townhomes with no green space other than a small mulch playground, hills completely leveled in the newest section, and major destruction of the natural wildlife habitat with almost none of the preserved natural area promised by the original sales materials or by county document tenant 2. This destruction, while unsightly, has also displaced large numbers of deer, which are now seen with greater frequency devouring many of our residents' home gardens, gardens which are an important and cherished part of our community, while also bringing in pests like disease-carrying ticks. How does this affect the proposed development plan for Block 8? Block 8, as you saw from the drawing, does not exist in a vacuum, but it's also part of the community as a whole. And as currently proposed, it will be an unbroken line of hyperdense horizontal development of over 150 units, replacing the existing green space, which also connects to and into Phase 4. This will be green space forever lost to the community, which has already passed the tipping point for a reasonable proportion of green space to housing and the within 250 feet of every home that we were sold. This lack of green space will only add to the urban heat island effect, which is anti the sustainability goals. Plenty of data exists that supports the positive psychological effects of nature and green spaces within communities. So why can't we strive for a win-win here? One solution might be to break the proposed solid line of units into segments comprised of 4 to 5 units with areas of green space in between, so that Block 8 affords its future residents a better quality of life, as well as helping to better achieve the original goals of Belvedere as a whole. Thank you.
Lord Taylor and Amy Richardson is on deck. And please state your name and place of residence.
Good evening. My name is Lori Taylor, and I live in the Belvedere community within the Rio District. I'm here with my neighbors to support and advocate for Albemarle County's affordable housing plan. In particular, we stand for and ask for your support of the relevant objectives and strategies for affordable for-sale housing in Block 8. These are, quote, Objective 1, increase the housing supply to meet the diverse housing needs of county residents. Objective 3, improve access to affordable home ownership opportunities and promote long-term affordability of for-sale housing, targeting households earning between 80% and 120% of AMI, end quote. Also, these relevant strategies, quote, Strategy 3B, provide incentives to increase production of affordable and workforce for-sale housing. Strategy 3D, develop procedures for monitoring and enforcing occupancy and sales price restrictions required by law and/or funding sources. And Strategy 3E, develop mechanisms to ensure affordable for-sale units developed with county incentives and to remain affordable for a minimum of 40 years, end quote. Again, we support the delivery of affordable for-sale housing in Block 8, and we are asking for your support as well. We believe this option is better as it supports families buying affordable homes and adds to the diversity of our community, meets a county housing goal to provide longer-term permanent affordable housing options, and enables households to manage their budgets without a 3% year increase in rents as offered in the developer proffers for rental housing. However, we point out that the county requirements for awarding the density bonus to the developer for this for-sale housing and the developer's proffers do not assure that such housing will actually be delivered to eligible households. Therefore, we support for-sale affordable housing in Belvedere provided the county advances its housing of Albemarle strategies by requiring the county to provide an established structure assuring that the homes are sold to qualifying affordable families. The developer submits documentation on a per-unit basis as to the affordable sales price and the homeowner's eligibility and purchase of the home. Such measures will meet the county's housing strategies, assure developer compliance for the bonus, and demonstrate how such a program can be implemented and delivered on the county's strategic plan. This approach will make the county's plan real and bring homeownership to the working families of our county. Thank you for listening this evening.
Thank you. Amy Richardson and Mike Moore is on deck.
Good evening. My name is Amy Richardson. I live in the Belvedere community in the Rio Magisterial District. I'm joining my neighbors tonight to express serious concerns about this rezoning request. In the original Belvedere Code of Development, Block 8 is approved for 33 townhomes only in the neighborhood model of development. The total now requested by Greenwood Homes is 161, a nearly 500% increase in density. Look carefully at the proposed plan for Block 8 and what is Greenwood actually seeking. They are asking you to allow them to create a hyper-dense, de facto horizontal apartment complex with a density of R16. This compares with R12 for the reserves and R16 for Rio Point. Sprawled along the railroad tracks, this de facto apartment complex, excuse me, has none of its own amenities and no apartment complex management services. Importantly, it has very limited and ill-defined green spaces, grossly inadequate parking, and very small streets and alleyways. Further, if you zoom out for just a second, please note that this horizontal apartment complex continues north through phase 4. further stressing our already inadequate infrastructure. As previously discussed, this density and design violate many of the core tenets of the neighborhood model of development. Members of our Belvedere community recognize that the original density of less than R4 in Block 8 does not support Albemarle County's goal as articulated in AC 44 of significantly increasing housing density within the development zones. We believe there is a rational and acceptable density greater than the original design, but less than apartment complex density that can result in a win-win-win for the county, the developer, and the community. As you consider Greenwood's de facto horizontal apartment complex rezoning request, please consider their track record in Belvedere to date. No green spaces, a couple of mulch-covered playgrounds only, a fake parking plan that benefits only Saka, and broken promises and strong-arm tactics around the community center, the second garden space, and other amenities. If you want to stay true to the Belvedere model of development, a decades-old social contract between the Belvedere homeowners and the county, please do not support this request. Send the developer and the county planning staff back to the table with this community to find a better solution. We welcome the opportunity to participate in such a process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Moore, and then Lori Castine is on deck.
Good evening. My name is Mike Moore, and my wife and I live at 757 Belvedere Boulevard in the Rio District. My wife and I decided to move to Charlottesville 8 years ago because our son and his family are here, plus 3 grandkids. You know what that's like. We looked at a number of different places in Albemarle County for what we wanted to call home when we lived here. And when we got to Belvedere, the search was over. Belvedere represented everything that we were looking for, everything we desired. It was just perfect. Since that time, that's 8 years ago, since that time, this development has grown tremendously. Lots and lots of people, lots and lots of young family, lots and lots of young families with children. So most of my talk is going to be talking about safety relative to Belvedere Boulevard from the center all the way up to the soccer building, which, by the way, is where all the construction traffic goes, right by our house now. And I'm assuming it will with the new development. One of my primary concerns is we've got parked cars all up and down Belvedere Boulevard. Those kids are out, not necessarily in the winter, but in the summer when it's warmer. They're out on their bicycles, their tricycles, they're all kind of toys that I didn't have when I was a kid, but there's lots of them out there, and they're on the sidewalks and so on. It would be a shame, it would be more than that, if one of those kids on one of those toys enjoying their time happened to come out from behind one of those parked cars with some of this traffic that we've got on Belvedere Boulevard now. Because you're not going to see them. They're below the hood line. It would be tragic. It'd be a tragic safety incident. Then the other thing I wanted to mention is that road is used a lot for construction traffic, as I mentioned earlier. It's also the prime entrance for emergency vehicles like fire trucks and ambulances and so on. It's really poor design for handling anything of that size. It's a small, narrow road, has a median. All the turns that they would need to take to get off of that road are very tight, and it's difficult to make those turns in a larger vehicle. So what do? They run over curves, they run over our decorations and all that kind of stuff, and just make a mess of everything. And that's not going to change with new construction up. They're still going to be using those ways. The other thing we want to talk a little bit about is these folks that would be living on the railroad tracks if this development goes through. And I've heard it said that there's no concern about a issue with the trains having problems or whatnot.
If you could bring your comments to a close, that you're out of time.
I'm closed.
If you could bring your comments to a close.
Yes, sir, I sure will. Our concern as a group here is safety, pure and simple. I would ask you to think in terms of talking to developers and ask them, what are they doing for the safety of the people around them? What are they doing to protect the kids, to protect other people that are already there? There's an old Western saying, you need to hope for the future, but plan for disaster.
Thank you.
Hope things go well, but you've got a plan in case it doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Lori Castine, and then we have Steve Rose on deck.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for your time. My name is Lori Castine. I own a townhome in Belvedere in the Rio Magisterial District. I also serve as chair of an ad hoc safety committee appointed by the HOA to address serious safety concerns that long predate this proposal. I want to address 3 interconnected safety issues. First, the proposed rezoning characterizes the units as attached single-family homes, which is misleading. Each structure is in fact a 3 to 4 bedroom apartment above a 2-bedroom apartment served by a single parking pad for just 2 vehicles and no garage. Although plans produced in December indicate garages, the developer has confirmed that there are none. Simply the parking pad and limited street parking. This creates a density significantly greater than that of the nearby Belvedere Reserve apartment complex. The average American household owns at least 2 vehicles, and many have 3 or more, particularly families with driving-age children. Yet this proposal provides extremely limited on-street parking and suggests that residents will park several blocks away, which is wholly unrealistic for families carrying infants, toddlers, or groceries, and reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of daily life. As a result, residents will park in no parking zones, as they already do throughout the existing phases of Belvedere, with no meaningful enforcement. Illegal street parking narrows roadways to the point that emergency vehicles cannot pass, let alone deploy life-saving equipment. Second, a safety committee survey found that the vast majority of residents exercise or engage in outdoor activities daily, and nearly half have children who walk to and from school bus stops. Current traffic volume and excessive speeds by residents, visitors, service vehicles, and construction traffic already pose a serious risk. There have been countless near misses, many involving children. These conditions existed before the current build-out in the northern part of the neighborhood and the adjacent Dunlora development, all of whose traffic flows directly through the center of Belvedere. This proposal would add 150 or so more dwellings and an estimated 300 to 500 additional vehicles. Third, ingress and egress from the neighborhood were already inadequate before the proposed expansion. All are located at the south end. The primary entrance and exit feeds onto Rio Road. The second requires a circuitous route through Dunlora and is rarely used due to its inconvenience. The third is a single-lane wooden railroad bridge owned by CSX with no posted weight limit, no clear maintenance schedule, whose longevity and structural integrity are dubious at best. In the event of a major fire or disaster near the south end of the neighborhood, individual escape or full evacuation would be nearly impossible. More likely, a fire in the north end of the neighborhood, including in the proposed redevelopment area, could become catastrophic before emergency responders could even get that far through the neighborhood, and that assumes the roads are passable with the illegal parking that we already see. I urge you to listen to the families who live here and simply want a safe place to call home, including affordable housing, as has been mentioned. Please reject this untenable zoning proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have Steve Rose and Tammy Rubel.
Good evening. My name is Steve Rose, and I own a home on Belvedere Boulevard in the Rio Magisterial District, and I'm here to summarize the concerns of my neighbors and ask the commission for several actions prior to any recommendation to the County Board of Supervisors regarding this rezoning request ZMA 2024-0005. So stop me if you've heard this one before. A developer, a county planner, and a neighborhood representative walk into a bar, or maybe it's a conference room. But the idea is that they come up with a win-win-win solution to a very thorny issue. That's the key to our presentations. We wanted a voice. We wanted you to hear us. You wanted to see us. This is a neighborhood that welcomes development, that welcomes the goals of our county. My wife and I have lived there for 3 years. We've been in Albemarle County for 50. I started my career as a tradesman here locally and then went on to become a lead AP construction manager for a huge company. So I really looked forward to seeing an environmentally friendly, smart, and planned development here in our county. In summary, tonight you have heard my neighbors talk about the history of our community, how we looked forward and bought into the promise of the neighborhood model, including green space and natural topography, our support of affordable housing, our concerns that the revised density in this proposal will not only tax the infrastructure, but also kick issues regarding future maintenance and parking down the road. And finally, and most importantly, the life safety reality of emergency vehicle access, as well as the proximity to a very active freight and passenger single line. So here is our ask. If you haven't yet, go visit the site and see the railroad cut and the constrained routes of emergency vehicles. Keep the neighborhood model in mind while making a decision to help stop the erosion of that foundational document. And finally, please don't support this request until a meeting with the developer, a planning staff, and a Belvedere community representative is held to find a better solution in keeping with the goals of AC 44. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Tammy Rubel and Pam Eddyburn is next.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Tammy Rubel, and I'm a resident at the Villas at Belvedere in the Rio District. The Villas, if you don't know it, is a very small neighborhood of 26 homes located at the end of Free State Road, and we're right at the entrance to Belvedere. Many of our neighbors have met with the residents of Belvedere, and we share their concerns about the proposed rezoning. While our issues are not exactly the same, there's a clear overlap of concern in the issue of safety. There's only one exit out of my neighborhood, and it goes to Free State Road and Belvedere Boulevard. Opposite our exit is the entrance to Fairview Swim and Tennis Club. Even on an average weekday, it can be very challenging to exit our neighborhood and make the left turn onto Belvedere Boulevard. There are often walkers, joggers, parents with strollers walking along the sidewalks in this area. It's already a serious safety issue for both current Belvedere residents as well as residents of the Villas. During the summer, when the swim club is open, the number of pedestrians increases as many members of the club walk easterly down Free State Road through the Villas and up the abandoned portion of Free State Road near Loring Run in order to shorten their walk home. The area at Free State Road and Belvedere Boulevard is extremely crowded with cars, traffic going in multiple directions, and pedestrians trying to cross the street. Adding more vehicles to that intersection is inevitably going to result in a much higher risk to the safety of vehicle drivers, pedestrians of all ages, and bicyclists. Another consideration is the location of the center at Belvedere, which is filled most days of the week with vehicles driven there by senior citizens. As the main road out from Belvedere passes the center, it should be a concern that increased traffic will pose an increased safety consideration for the older persons leaving the center and turning left onto Belvedere Boulevard. The increased traffic that would be the inevitable result of the proposed rezoning will also have a deleterious impact on those vehicles. Finally, there's the issue of public transportation. One of the principles of the Albemarle County Neighborhood Model of Development includes ready access to public transportation. The only public transportation that comes close to my neighborhood stops at the center, which is 3/4 of a mile from the Villas. The relatively narrow streets from Belvedere, coupled with dense street parking, would already be a challenge, but adding the vehicles that would result from the proposed rezoning might be the death knell to any hope of public transportation in the area. For these reasons, as well as those discussed by the residents of Belvedere, I urge the Planning Commission not to support this rezoning request. The increased density will adversely affect both Belvedere proper and the neighborhoods around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Eddyburn.
Good evening. I'm Pam Eddy Vernon. I'm a resident of Dunlora. We have concerns
Can you bring your
regarding
mic
this
closer to
Belvedere
your mouth?
proffer.
It turned, you can bend it. There you go.
As county employees, we expect you to be good stewards of the land and to be thoughtful of the current residents. If this proffer is approved, Belvedere will be close to 3 times larger than the original plan. We ask to please address the following issues. Traffic has increased substantially on Loring Run and Dunlora Drive as a pass-through to Belvedere. Vehicles speeding to and from Belvedere are dangerous with the width and curves of our roads, along with the noise. With this plan, traffic would increase exponentially. I'm not sure when the traffic survey was done, but you are more than welcome to come and sit at our house and watch the amount of traffic on a daily basis. Dunlora is being ignored. The safety of our children and adults are at risk. Without sidewalks, people have to use the side of the road. Many drivers have disregard for those individuals, and some of our residents have the pedestrians that are in our neighborhood have been run off the road by traffic. A road survey in the proffer noted 3 exits to main roads: Dunlora, Free State Bridge, and Belvedere Boulevard. Dunlora didn't ask to be a main exit for Belvedere. Free State one-car bridge is owned by the railroad and is not being maintained. This leaves 1 main exit for Belvedere. We ask before any additional housing is granted that the road exit problem in Belvedere be addressed. Infrastructure is vital for this area, and this proposal would create the total of 903 residences in Belvedere, most with multiple cars. In summary, I walk in Belvedere. I meet the residents. I support their concerns. Forests are being destroyed, displaced wildlife. Historic land is disrespected. I ask you to respect the current residents and deny any additions in Belvedere. But if you approve it, we ask that you also work with Dunlora in solving the traffic and speeding problem, and to add additional roads out of Belvedere to a main road, not through Dunlora. In Dunlora, we respect our residents, our wildlife, trees, and roads, and hope to maintain that for years to come. And we respect our neighbors in Belvedere. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of those that signed up. If there's anyone else that would like to speak. Madam Clerk, is there anyone on? Oh, sorry, yes. Please state your name. Please state your name and.
My name is Sonia McGrath, and I live in Belvedere on Shelton
Can
Street.
you, thank you.
And in the Rio District, I'm sad that we don't have our representative here for the Rio District, by the way. I sold Belvedere under a tent on red clay. I know what the vision was. I know what we promised our buyers. And I'm embarrassed to see what has happened since I was selling Belvedere in 2005, okay? So we hear, oh, but you know, the county, the VDOT, oh, well, Belvedere, that's a mistake. The roads that they put in there, that's a mistake. So we're living with it now, but you are allowing additional vehicles in Belvedere. My point here is not to repeat what everybody has said. That is totally justified. I am asking, in the middle of all of this, have you any idea that there's another development that will be bringing in 300 to 400 units in Dunlora Farm, and that will be going through Belvedere? None of you have discussed this, and it's amazing to me. Do you understand how much traffic that makes it come through? And you are adding on to Belvedere. And how Belvedere Farm got accepted, I don't even know. Going through Belvedere, and no offense to Dunlora. they didn't go, they couldn't go through them all. So they have to. come
Ma'am,
to
you have to
zoning.
speak forward.
Because
Okay,
it's too
Ma'am.
Ma'am,
expensive.
just, can you, ma'am, can you address the commission, please, and
Anyway,
speak into the microphone?
Administration, as a former realtor who sold Belvedere and who see what's happening to it, and to see that there is no concern by the developers. I'm sorry. I've worked as a realtor. I know the developers, and there's many of them who I like. And please, that sound is so annoying. Have respect for the people who are definitely concerned. Please, I'm telling you, this is a perfect example of the lack of concern and really understanding of what this Board of Supervisors is doing. I don't know. What, do you come out of your seats and go to these places and see what's happening? Have you seen what they're building in back of us? That was not planned, and I was not selling it, so I know it wasn't planned, and the county keeps on approving and approving. And why? Why? Because of the mighty dollar? This is not affordable housing. Belvedere was built under the pretense that we were having affordable housing. You know what the affordable housing is? It's a cottage above the garage that's 400 to 500 square feet for a minimum of $1,000 to $1,400. Tell me that's affordable.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Thank you for your time. My name is Matt Lichter. I've lived in Belvedere for 16 years. I was in the first group that moved in. I won't repeat what everyone else has said. There's one thing I want to ask of the committee. I know that there are a very large number of people who are watching right now remotely. I was wondering if there was a way that we could get on the record the number of people who are calling in remotely. I do know that there's a lot of people in the Belvedere neighborhood with small children and other reasons they cannot come tonight. I'd like those people to be recognized as also part of this already very large group here. My only other comment that hasn't been stated so far is that this is an example of a printout that was provided by Greenwood Homes at one of our neighborhood meetings. And based on the facts and the misleading things that are written in here, I would say that I do not trust this developer at all. And if you're interested in the way they've deceived us, there are plenty of people here who can share concrete evidence of the way that they have deceived us and manipulated the facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Madam Clerk, is there anyone online that would like to speak?
Several people online, but nobody with their hand up. No.
So
nobody
no
else.
one would like to speak. Okay. So we're closing the public comments. And we'll ask the applicant if they would like to come and address any of the comments that you heard.
Thank you for the opportunity to respond. To start with, Ms. Kirchner outlined neighborhood model principles. Ms. Kirchner noted the initial components of the Belvedere neighborhood. Those components were built at the same time as the neighborhood model principles were instituted within Albemarle County. Each one of the rezonings, from the initial rezoning to this rezoning, are judged on effectively a neighborhood model checklist as part of the staff report to see if the neighborhood model principles are consistent with every rezoning that you see. Those are very much the same principles as that are in Belvedere. A couple of other notes. I think maybe we failed to emphasize the importance of the greenway system that would be a part of this proposal because it relates to a number of the things that were mentioned. Ms. Bossert mentioned the initial, the proposal of everyone lives within 250 feet of green space. That greenway would count as those green space. So as it's included all the way down through phase 4, and then connects down into the floodplain, then you can see that we're integrating green space as much as possible. We're also doubling the size of the park within Block 8 as initially proposed. I think it was 0.28 acres, and it's 0.65 acres now. So there's more in a doubling of the size of the park within Block 8. Ms. Taylor had a very intriguing response about 80 to 120% AMI for sale product. We agree. Like we feel that for sale product in that range is very important in Albemarle County. And all of you know the way that it's the best way for us to get there. It's density within the area where there is infrastructure and allowing us townhouses in the 400,000s meets the 120% AMI for sale product. So the best way that we can respond to that is to build townhouses in this area. There was a significant comment about horizontal apartment complex for this proposal. Just a reminder that we are proposing 20% affordable housing within this. The initial Belvedere neighborhood also included 20% affordable housing. So horizontal apartment complex is not how the Belvedere neighborhood feels now. And as shown in the image that we had previously, lost that. This is what that density looks like. Ms. Castine and a number of people talked about safety, and I think that is an important issue. There's a lot of things that conflict within safety. Certainly street safety, children's safety, crosswalk safety. Those are all very important things that I think we should address here, the county should address, and you should address with each one of your projects. There's a lot of conflict that goes with that because there's also comments about parking. On-street parking is a significant problem as it comes to crosswalk pedestrian safety. Street trees in Belvedere in the initial section where the street trees are great. You drive through the first part of Belvedere. We wish we could do street trees like that today. We're not able to due to utilities, due to FDOT restrictions, but it causes visibility issues. It's important for us to acknowledge the things that are creating safety. And you can also see the transition that Albemarle County has gone through on Belvedere Boulevard itself, from the initial section with the narrow streets, with the street trees, with the parking. And then on the other section of the Village Green, where the median is gone, and the road width is about 40 feet, and you have parking on both sides, and the traffic is very fast. So these are the challenges that we're facing in Belvedere and you're facing throughout the county. Finally, Fire and Rescue has review of this proposal, and their comment in the staff report is that they had no comments. I don't think we should take that as carte blanche, that safety is fine, but at the same time, we should acknowledge that there are mechanisms within the review process for this to be considered. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions for the applicant? Any additional questions? Did you have some additional? It's just for the applicant?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll bring it out for our deliberation. So, Commissioner King, would you like to start us off?
Thank you. One of my questions is for historical reference because I wasn't here at the time. So maybe one of you can answer this, or Kevin or Michael could answer it. There's probably a good reason that Dunlora Park does not have an exit through Old Dunlora Farm Road.
There are a lot of different sections of Dunlora, so I don't know if Kevin and Michael know exactly what you're talking about as far as why it doesn't have it. Is it a section that's under review or under construction right now, or is it which? We might need some
Are
clarification.
you referring to the Dunlora Village, the new development in Dunlora Village at the back? Yeah. So when the original Dunlora was approved, there were different requirements by the county, and we did not have the same requirements that would allow us to have them build stub outs to future developments. out that could have connected to Dunmora Village. So when Belvedere was built, obviously, under our new county code, we require those connections. And so that was where the opportunity for Dunmora Village to connect to Belvedere existed, but it was not able to connect to the original Dunmora.
Sure, but there's an old farm road that goes down to that.
And
Off of-
that farm road is under private ownership
Not a
by.
part of the development.
Yeah,
Understood.
or it's not public, it's by the homeowners association. So they're the only ones that have access through that road.
Thank you. That answers my question. One of my thoughts is if we expect people in this neighborhood to utilize public transportation in the future in order to minimize their use on vehicular traffic and therefore need less parking, I think we need to plan for bringing public transportation into the neighborhood. So like, can the bus get to the circle in Belvedere and back out so that people can actually ride a bus without having to walk to the center? I think is a legitimate concern of mine. I also hear the residents saying that, you know, maybe less units and more parking is potentially a win-win. And I hear that, and I don't disagree with it based on what we've heard, so.
Can tag on to that. As a general statement, when I have proposals for more density, I tend to favor them because it does meet the goals of the comprehensive plan. I also drove my way too large vehicle through your neighborhood because my husband bought a really large vehicle. I'm blaming him, but I did experience what it's like to try to navigate around on weekends with kids running around and stuff. And I am concerned that I don't have a problem with the design of the units. I think they look fine. It just feels like it's really packed in there, and looking at how you get in and out, it's like there's not a lot of choice. This is not a great neighborhood grid system with lots of different choices that can be made. And so it's sort of forced out through a neighborhood that's already extremely congested. And I'm not convinced by the parking plan that I heard that it is enough for people's stuff. I understand that it has to meet the county's parking requirements, but there's the reality of friends come over and birthday parties and girlfriends and boyfriends and all of that, it doesn't look to me like it has enough overflow for those uses. So that, again, I can't do a detailed analysis of the parking plan from the dais with the information I've been given this evening. But it just, as a gut check, in terms of looking at what was allowed before, I think it could be more dense than what the current allowed plan is. I agree with that, but I think this is too much.
Yeah, so as someone who has an interest in sustainability, I remember when this was proposed. I remember that it was highly
I
touted.
remember the videos and brochures. I saw all of that at
Yeah.
the time. I wasn't on this body. None of us were
Yeah.
here during that.
And it took me just a few minutes to pull up an article from 2011, says a green Belvedere begins to take shape. Once again, talking about the green sustainable features that were supposed to be part of the development. And so it's kind of a shame. I mean, because I had kind of hoped, that maybe we could have, those sorts of features in here. It'd be nice. I mean, certainly we can't require that, but I mean, it's a shame that there couldn't be more sustainable features in keeping with that original vision incorporated into this.
Yeah.
And I think there's certainly ways to do it. You have the road that's, you have you have the street that's proposed to go through there with sidewalks, where you have I can't show the audience, but you have the little pink and green line going through there that connects to the greenway. That could be a green street, right? That could be, you could do a lot with that. There could be incorporation of native plants. As you say, you don't have to have a big row of houses that could be broken up.
Yeah, I actually like the neighborhood's suggestion for that, to have fingers of green that would break it up and not feel like such a mass, because I do understand on, if you calculate the amount of acreage of the Greenway Trail and the Ravenna River, it's a lot of green. That's true. But in the reality of like a mom with two tots, they're not necessarily going to go all the way down the Greenway Trail. They're looking for green space that they can enjoy right where they live. And it seems to me that the amount of little clusters of little pocket parks and green spaces is few and far between. There's not that much there. That's just how it felt to me. I don't know, Kara, what your impressions are.
So, yeah, so it's several points. I mean, one is the realization from the county that this road is probably never going to happen.
Right.
Creates an opportunity.
Mhm.
And for some development. I just don't think this is it. So I do think that keeping within the typical model that's there is appropriate, and they've done that to some degree, but I'm also not convinced about the parking. I'm not convinced about some of the circulation and just the overall density. It feels too much, but I do think there's an opportunity there.
Yeah,
So it's a
something
development
better.
worth doing. I just don't think they have it quite right yet. And so, I mean, those are I think I echo, I don't want to repeat this because we can, repeat everything you said, but I agree with those comments as well.
And I think it was mentioned in the application about the soccer, field house and the parking challenges that currently come along with that. I'm familiar with those. I have small children, like people are bleeding over into this neighborhood trying to get to that facility. And, the street system and the parking is not currently adequate. I recognize that this tries to address some of that, but by adding parking and then adding houses, I think the equation is not coming out right direction.
I mean, I think too, I mean, just in thinking about green spaces, I mean, I think it'd be good for the neighborhood and the developer to have conversation about what kinds of green space they really want. If there's a mismatch there, I mean, I think often there can be, and I'm seeing a lot of hands raised there. So I think, there can be a big difference in the quality of green space. I mean, the kinds of green space I appreciate may not be the kinds of green space that other people appreciate. For me, it's not a soccer field.
Right.
But, I think there's ways of incorporating more meaningful green space within the built environment. I mean, the UVA has a ton of examples of that. It's University of Virginia, very dense space, manages to incorporate really high quality green space within UVA.
And I'd like to just go back to my question and comment about access. I currently live in a neighborhood in the county where we have a dedicated strip of land that was proffered as being transferred over to the county, which has happened. It's inaccessible by both our neighborhood and the public. So I don't know how many years it's going to take for anyone to actually utilize that beautiful green space that we're supposed to be able to get to. But this feels a little bit like that. I mean, I recognize that the concept is that people will come from either end, from Still Meadow and from, I guess it's the south end. But if you're going to build something that you want the community to use, I think you have to allow for people to get to it, both with parking, I mean,
Right.
I think if we want people to go in there and go down to the Rivanna and use the Albemarle Trail, they've got to be able to get to it without having to hike 5 miles.
Right. That's a good point.
I would just add on to Commissioner Murray's suggestion of more dialogue. I think more dialogue would be important between the development and the community. There are a lot of good moves here. The trails, addressing parking at SoCa, because I'm sure that when there's events there's a lot of people. So trying to address that, I commend that. I think there's a lot of good moves. However, I think in my opinion and the opinion of the dais, I don't believe this is ready to go forward. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'm going to make it if you want to. Right. I move to recommend denial of ZMA 2024-000005, due to our commission's finding that the density is too extensive for the recreation space provided, and the parking plan seems inadequate for the demand on the neighborhood currently, including existing traffic patterns inside the neighborhood.
Before a second, I believe the applicant would like to address
The applicant would like to defer to a specific date in the future. We appreciate the comments from the planning commission in the neighborhood. We think there is an opportunity for us to find the right plan moving forward. I think this has been very helpful for us to hear these comments, and we welcome, further collaboration with the neighborhood, and we would request that there are members of the neighborhood that can meet with us and provide us a plan that is best suited for the neighborhood in Belvedere and for the county.
I think in that case, I would be willing to withdraw my motion.
and then we would need to have a motion.
Right, the commission would then need to make a motion to accept the deferral, and if the applicant has a specific date, if they could state the specific date they want to defer it to, the motion could include the deferral to the specific date.
The applicant have a specific
And
date.
may I just say one thing here? I mean, I'm not quite sure what the scope of what we would need to do. I mean, we can defer it to a date, but it may be, you may want to defer it to to another date where we hold another, we re-advertise it. We're not held to a date we're working towards.
I think
We
that's
don't, in other words, we do not have to
depends
defer it to a
on-
date specific. We can just defer it and then
If
when we're
we-
right, come back.
Right, if there is not a date specific, then it can just be a motion for deferral to an indefinite date.
Okay, so we request a deferral to a later date.
Indefinite date.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the deferral to an indefinite date.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'll just make you've heard some of our comments tonight, but this is more for the residents and attendants. A deferral is not simply a delay of approval. A deferral is a deferral to see a better proposal come forward with some of the additional dialogue that the neighbors have requested. So we try to be fair. If we thought that there was, this was just an absolutely no hope project, we would just deny it. This area is slated to be developed in some way. We just want to see a better project that can hopefully have community support. So that's what we're waiting on.
And that's what I heard you ask for, density, affordable housing safely. And that's what I think we want to see.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Yes. Ms. King,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Carazana,
Aye.
Ms. Firehawk.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and we are going to, at the chairs, we're going to take a 7-minute recess. Come back in session. I know. So we are now in a work session for ZTA 2024-1 Rio 29 Form-Based Code Update. We'll get the staff.
Yes,
So-
and you are correct. I have mislabeled the CTA on the presentation, so please forgive me for that. Good evening. My name is Mariah Gleason. I'm a senior planner in the Planning Division of Community Development. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting, as you said, ZTA 2024-1 Rio 29 Form-Based Code Updates. Thank you for letting us come and ask for your feedback on this project. We're bringing this to the Planning Commission in 2 work sessions. In the first meeting tonight, we'll ask about proposed overarching, or as we're calling it, fundamental changes. And in the second session, we'll focus on more detailed regulatory and technical changes. I've tailored this presentation to focus on proposed changes to the current Rio 29 Form-Based Code. There's a lot more information in the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the staff report or presentation. We're sharing a lot of information tonight. While most of the changes work together, I'll stop periodically to invite discussion on the questions staff has for the Planning Commission. I'm hoping that will trick you into thinking this is a shorter presentation than it actually is. As background, why are we updating the RIO 29 form-based code? The county adopted its first form-based code in September 2021. Form-based codes differ from traditional and conventional zoning districts by focusing on how the building relates to sidewalks and streets to create a place, rather than governing development through land use or residential density. So it focuses on the outside of the building rather than the inside. The RIO 29 form-based code was adopted as an implementation tool of the RIO 29 small area plan that preceded it. The vision of that plan is the creation of a vibrant, connected mixed-use community with enhanced amenity spaces. To implement that vision, the RIO 29 form-based code allows dense urban development by right, with an emphasis on streets and recreation spaces. Lastly, the code functions as an optional zoning district, meaning it enables landowners to choose between by right development under the standards of the RIO 29 form-based code or those of the underlying zoning district assigned to the property. Knowing the county is new to form-based codes, we anticipated that the first few development projects would reveal problems with the code, and that's proven to be the case. Some of the problems we experienced with the first few approved site plans highlighted in teal on the map were street requirements that didn't align with county transportation plans, a lack of standards for required elements, unintended loopholes in the requirements, and several others. So in April 2024, the board approved a resolution to amend the RIO 29 form-based code to address the issues within the code. Based on feedback from applicants, the development community, architects, and the consultant group who you'll meet at the next meeting, staff have proposed changes that address these problems while still achieving the vision of the RIO 29 small area plan. To be clear, the RIO 29 form-based code is currently in effect. The proposed changes staff are presenting tonight and at the upcoming meeting are updates intended to address known administration and implementation challenges identified since adoption. Staff discussed many of these changes with the development community and the local community advisory committee, or CAC, and feedback from both groups was generally positive and supportive of the overall direction. As a reminder, these are the questions staff are asking the PC to consider tonight. But again, we'd be happy to answer any other questions you have on the staff report or presentation. Staff are proposing 6 fundamental changes to the RIO 29 form-based code. We'll go through each one in turn. This I'll spend a while on, so sit back. The form-based code is organized into 3 character areas, which help define the intensity of development and level of activity. The core character areas, shown in red, act as the heart of the district. These areas have the densest development, highest levels of activity, and most urban forms. So you can think of this as the district's focal point or destination. So to give you a sense of the feel of this character area, you would see the tallest buildings here positioned close to the street, typically with parking behind and highly transparent first floors to support commercial uses. The flex areas shown in white allow greater variation in building form and scale. Buildings in flex areas are shorter than those in the character area and are generally subject to less prescriptive requirements. Developments in this character area focus on providing safe, comfortable bike and pedestrian connections from the edges of the district to core areas. The edge areas, shown in blue, have the lowest development intensity. Buildings in these areas are typically 1 to 3 stories in height and are designed to provide an intentional transition between denser urban development and surrounding single-family neighborhoods. So this map shows the current configuration of character areas within the RIO 29 form-based code. Staff have consistently received questions and feedback on the requirements of the core, but we found the feedback was actually indicative of a location issue. First, the core is centered on the intersection of Route 29 and Rio Road, two high-speed, high-volume roads. High-traffic roads adjacent to core developments are concerning for pedestrian safety and the ability to create a successful pedestrian-oriented environment. There's a tension between the design intent of the core area and the character of adjacent arterial roadways. The second issue that the Rio 29 form-based code requires commercial or retail uses on ground floors of every development within the core. At 109 acres, the core area is too expansive for this requirement. It dilutes instead of concentrating commercial and pedestrian activity. Also, the design standards intended to support these commercial uses, such as mostly transparent facades and ground floor ceiling heights of 15 feet, increase development costs for every building within the core, which may not achieve the active commercial centers it envisions, again, due to the extent of the core area. To resolve those issues, staff are proposing two changes. The first is to shift the core area designation to align with existing shopping centers, those being Rio Hills Shopping Center, Albemarle Square, and Fashion Square Mall, where a density of commercial activity is already present and the ownership isn't as fractured. Separating the primary pedestrian systems from the high-speed vehicular corridors better accomplishes the goals of both, accommodating regional transportation through the area and creating safer, more pleasant pedestrian-focused centers where people might feel invited to stay, walk, and pop into multiple businesses that they might not otherwise. Parcels that are no longer core are proposed to be redesignated as flex areas shown in white, and no changes are proposed to the locations or extents of the edge areas shown in blue. This proposed concept is similar to the squares design alternative presented in the Rio 29 small area plan. The second change is the addition of a new destination street type. A good example of the look and feel of this street type is Bond Street at the shops at Stonefield. Similar to Bond Street, these street types are envisioned to be at least 1,200 feet in length, which is about a quarter mile. Design standards for commercial uses would be tailored to this street type, or this street type instead of every street within the core. Examples of design standards include wider sidewalks, streetscape furniture, visually engaging and mostly transparent building frontages, taller ground floor ceiling heights, and other aspects that encourage an inviting walkable and comfortable pedestrian experience. To summarize, staff are proposing two changes to address the challenges identified to the current character area boundaries, shifting the core areas to existing shopping centers and introducing destination street types. So this brings us to our first question. Does the Planning Commission agree with moving from a single core area centered on Rio Road, Route 29, and that intersection to core areas centered on existing shopping centers?
Yes. A yes with a comment.
Okay.
I feel like a crazy person. It is real. Oh, sorry. All right. Well, we don't need to record that first part anyway. I sat on this commission when we did the Rio form-based code the first time. And I very clearly said at that time, it didn't make sense to have the intersection of Rio and 29 as the center. And that it made sense because of the difficulties of crossing that, notwithstanding the pedestrian improvements, and that we should have smaller, decentralized cores. So this was ignored. Here we are today. I rest my case. I still think the same thing that I said originally.
Of course, we're glad to prove you right, as always. What I'd say, there's also this other nuance I want to make sure you talk about a little bit. There was this idea of creating a district also too. So what you see on the left-hand side, that whole area it wasn't just at the intersection. It was that whole area, that whole 109 acres was supposed to be sort of this walkable, taller first floors and intent to make that commercial. I think, so not only is it sort of the location, it's just kind of the scale that was envisioned in that one seemed to be a tall order to meet, in the market conditions around here. So again, this destination street concept, and we're part looking at shops at Stonefield, you know, it's about 1,200 feet, and we're like, that's a good, it's 3 or 4 blocks of commercial. Now, to be clear, when they come into these new cores, that's what we're looking for that kind of mixed use, destination area. Whether that is a single street in a single alignment, whether that is 2 crossing streets, we've tried to leave that flexibility for the developer to try and see how it would best meet those conditions. And it may be even that there's actually aspects of the code, which you get into next time, sort of see allows maybe even some more flexibility. Okay, so maybe you can't deliver 1,200 feet, so how about 800 feet? So we try to work that
Yeah.
flexibility.
To be clear, I like the idea of form-based code. I think it's a great tool. It's, but I still question a little bit, and we can go on to other things, but I still question a little bit how we get developers to build a different kind of product because it's in an already built environment, right? So it's not like they have this blank slate and they can just do it how they would ideally do it, and they have a successful model down the road at the shops. So like when I was in Charlottesville, we did a lot of work in Belmont. We built new medians, we built new tree plantings, we narrowed the streets down, we put benches in, we put vegetation. We did a lot. The city did the infrastructure investment to convince the people there to redevelop those properties. They were vacant and used as storage, and people laughed at us. Like, that's crazy. No one's ever going to fix that area up. So I don't know how we get the private sector, whether we have enough incentives just through form-based code to make that sort of Herculean lift. So I'm obviously not on the board of
Yeah.
supervisors. It's not my money, but it just seems like the county may need to invest more substantively to actually spur this.
We actually had this discussion with Mr. Carazana yesterday. when we were
I'm not gonna
doing
get
it.
on my soapbox, I think that's what you called it, but,
No, I just was gonna say,
Yeah,
undoubtedly, this is a tough thing to do.
yeah,
The focus we're trying to, tonight, we're bringing you is the rules,
right.
right? Obviously, you're talking about incentives. We need to work with VDOT to try and get better street standards that allow us to do some of the things we sort of heard about tonight, that VDOT standards may not work. So there's that, and there's several other things that we need to do as a community. I think what we're trying to do with this ordinance, and part of this thing is that this change is sort of a reality check to probably what the market is and the location. I think that's really what this question's about. I think there's other carrots that have to be in this ordinance so that it is usable and attractive.
Yeah,
So
for example,
that's what we
yeah,
should be talking
I was
about a lot.
looking
And
at your-
then
yeah.
on top of that, the investments that might need to be made.
Yeah, like for incentives, with density bonuses for affordable housing, I said, what about for putting a green roof on your building? Then people can be up on top of the green roof, looking out at the gorgeous views from there. We can get better stormwater management. There's lots of interesting things we could do, but I'm gonna stop talking.
yeah, I'm gonna make my comments very brief so we can move over and keep Ms. Gleason on track here. So I agree with this. I think I was actually not part of the voting member. I was a university rep at the time when we had the conversation on this. It made a lot of sense to break it up into manageable pieces. I think also they can have their own identity. They can begin to develop and market them in certain ways because they do have their own identity today, right?
Same. Yeah.
So when you get the mall that's and prime opportunity there, right? So I think we all agree and that this is the right move, and hopefully we can work on incentives, and everything doesn't have to be in terms of regulations, but it could be a qualitative comment on what could be done, right? And the incentives that we talk about, parking garages and things that could make amenity spaces here and more developable spaces, but then also more amenity spaces as well, right? I think we could.
Yeah, but I will say that, I mean, much in line, I think, echoing what has already been said, I mean, I do think this has to be paired with incentives. I mean, I think we're all in agreement with this. And I think, but I think, also, echoing what Karen said or implied, talking about, green roofs, I think I would like to see some more in here in terms of the form-based code itself, about encouraging low impact development.
I
And
think
so,
they're gonna work on that in the next phase, but still,
okay, so-
good to elevate that.
yeah, I mean, like, there's just little things here and there, and I don't want to get in the weeds, but just as one little example, on page 46, it says, allow curb cuts. We can do better than allowing curb cuts for stormwater. We can encourage or require curb cuts for stormwater. So like we
Well,
can,
if I can just interject, looking at the code, I think it's helpful to think of it as minimum standards rather than expectations.
Mhm.
The code operates as setting a low bar or a bar for what a development has to achieve. So if we want it to achieve more, we have to tell it that it has to. And then we have to add requirements and definitions to that enough to be able to regulate it and review it. I think one of the problems that, and we'll get into this next time, one of the problems that we have with green infrastructure is that we didn't define it and we said that it is required, but we didn't say what would meet that standard. So is it a tree? Is it, what does that really mean? So I think with
That
these
was always coming
standards.
later from the staff. I had several meetings, this is before your time, with staff about things I would like to see in there.
so
Mm.
there's,
And it just didn't get
No.
done, but it was intended.
yeah, so if we're raising the bar, raise the bar to a low bar. There's a,
Well, I think
There's
we should just think about it as
Yeah,
minimum,
but
these
there
are
was-
minimum
yeah,
requirements.
I'll just say there was a guide that was produced a long time ago called Before the Storm about good stormwater management. That is a low bar that we should at least strive to achieve that because that standard's been out there for a while. So, but yeah, I would like to see more in this, but I think focusing on these, I think the proposed layout is much better. We really need to, as we've said, we need to get at these big shopping centers.
Yeah.
We need to get at, Fashion Square Mall and Albemarle Square and, so I mean, I think, but it's going to take multiple tools to get there.
And when you break them up, they don't all have to be exact. They can have their own
Oh,
identity. So
Yeah.
we're gonna let you move on.
Okay. Well, thank you. The discussion, it's nice to have unanimous decision-making. So the second fundamental change is the recommendation for a street-centric framework. Typically, form-based codes organize regulations based on character areas or something similar, or streets. The current form-based code uses both to govern built form, which has created confusion in understanding how the regulations apply to a given property. To resolve the issue, we're proposing a framework where the form-based code regulations are primarily determined by abutting street type. By organizing requirements around streets, we're able to promote a more consistent experience along each street. The second issue is that the current RUD 29 form-based code treats streets as having equal and interchangeable priority. This can lead to inconsistent and unpredictable building orientation, and it lacks the sophistication to allow changes to building form and function along secondary side streets. So to address this, we created a street hierarchy shown in this table. The hierarchy directs building form and orientation to be prioritized and consistent along high-ranking primary streets while allowing greater flexibility along secondary streets. Destination streets have the highest priority to support continuous engaging building frontages along commercial streets and a welcoming pedestrian experience. Avenues and boulevards are ranked second and third to encourage travel along streets that function as key bike and pedestrian connectors to and within the RIO 29 form-based code. And collectively, the street hierarchy balances pedestrian-focused placemaking with regional transportation needs. And this brings us to the second question. Does the Planning Commission support the approach of using a street-centric framework to organize regulations and inform built form? And I've provided a copy of the street hierarchy here as well for ease of reference.
So my question is, if Rio Road is the boulevard,
Mhm.
and 29 is the corridor, what's an example of a local street?
A local street is anything that gets you, it's like that last mile that you drive. So we'll use this map. I realize it's trying to do other things, but the purpose of the form-based code, or one of the intents, is to break up the district into a more grid-like system. Right now, the blocks are these super blocks. They're about 1,000 feet in length and they lack sidewalks. That's a really hard block to walk for anybody without arrest. And if you're worried about safety especially. So one of the requirements of the form-based code is to start breaking up these blocks and adding streets to bisect them or trisect them, however long they may be. So if you imagine, breaking up the Rio Hill Shopping Center with maybe into 9 blocks or 12 blocks, those would be examples of local streets where it's getting you straight to the front door. But it's not one of those main streets. The main streets, like the avenues and boulevards, have already been built. They're already public. Local streets would most likely be new streets.
Okay. So
I think a lot of the concept, of what this is, it's like we need to try and create, I think the initial steps in this ordinance, if it gets implemented, it would be great to have a building fronting every single street and have a big parking deck to make that happen. I mean, ultimately, that's that really deep urban form that we aspire to. I think the practicality of it is it may be something that intensifies over time. So somebody comes in, they need some surface parking lots, so we can't just, they're not going to start with parking decks. We're not going to have a fully built out area. We can get the grid network established. If we can get buildings oriented towards some of these primaries, towards a destination street, it starts to create that sense of place that we're trying to make these places successful. That's what Bond Street does. If you look at that, the buildings front that street, the parking's behind. Had that development been able to build out as was originally intended when it was first zoned, they had parking decks and they were going to have buildings on every street. So I think maybe that one day Bond Street and Shop at Stonefield will get a parking deck and we'll go denser, and some of those other streets may further fill in. But the point of having the street hierarchy is to say, hey, listen, make sure you put those buildings fronting that destination street first.
Right.
And then those avenues, we want to try and create some continuity of
So
presence on those as well.
And the reason I asked for sort of a definition or example of local street is because I don't foresee in my mind what that is in a level between Rio and 29. I'm seeing a missing designation between Destination Street and Avenue. So more like a district avenue, so you've got Bond Street and then you've got District, and District doesn't have anything fronting it, right? Is that the
Right.
one that goes across to Costco, right? So that's just my comment, is that I can't envision what a local street would be, but I can see that there might be a different designation between Destination and Avenue, something intermediate.
Yeah.
But I like the concept.
So when we come back to you next time, we'll talk a little bit more about the different street sections that are in the code. Each of these things are defined with standards, and that's sort of what is a fundamental template that governs how this thing should be built out. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Taking it back to the shops at Stonefield, some of those local streets would be some of the ones that are sort of in the back. Well, actually, they've done a great job fronting in that development, but the ones that are back behind the Hyatt and sort of those are these, they're like they're the lowest in sort of intensity. Most local ones, well, the places where you'd have some of the other housing that may be along these streets. If we could, who knows exactly what the form is? I'm having a hard time explaining myself, but just in the hierarchy of this stuff, they're not 29, they're not Rio Road, they're not Berkmar.
So what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is how would we correlate the relationship between the density and the street types in terms of like how we're pulling this together? Because it seems to me that that really is the overall density that's of the built environment that should determine what kind of form it surrounds it, right? So the more, the more you have tall buildings, the more important that streetscape becomes. If we think about Charlottesville, right? As the buildings went up, it became much more critical that you had bike lanes and street trees. So thinking about how we tie this, the streets, to how we think about, the density that correlates to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're missing in this is probably a map of where pedestrians would be most accommodated and where bicycles would be most accommodated. Because I think when you, looking at the map and just where the streets would lie in the district itself, I think what you would start to see is a web created of those primary pedestrian routes and the primary bike routes. And those would be covered by destination streets, avenues, and boulevards as the main axes by which you reach most places. And then the local streets would be those in between, like connectors to individual residences or buildings or what have you. But the destination street, avenue, and boulevard are really capturing and getting close to most everything. So that's where we prioritize the pedestrian.
Yeah, and I think when we think about where destination streets go, obviously, I think we need to look at not only where pedestrians want to go, but where they are going. Because there are a lot of people that are currently, I know a lot of people that do walk and run through the 29 corridor, not along 29, obviously, but definitely along the Meadow Creek Parkway, along, so really getting an idea of where people currently are and those traffic patterns so that we can start knitting those things together.
One thing I'm going to come back to is sort of the analogy. We're trying to create a carrot. This is an optional district. One of the things we're not doing here is we're not sort of establishing, hey, this is where the roads need to be as part of this district. Matter of fact, and in some respects, we're trying to back off from that. I mean, because the planners can't understand what the future might hold. We can't understand what one developer or another developer might do with one of those. So we're trying to set up a system where we say, hey, look, you have to have a grid network. And then when you're in that grid network, especially if you're in the core, you have to give us one of these streets. It's going to be a destination street, and the rest of them would be local, the new streets, basically. There'll be standards on that. And I think to your question of like what's happened on West Main Street, the vision was there. They sort of at least had the vision for what West Main Street was supposed to be, and maybe one day will be. But that density sort of came in over time. And I think what we want to try and do with this district is to allow for, if we can get the streets in the right spot, we can get some of these other things. And we may not have a parking deck in the first iteration of the development, but hopefully over time you can get more density and we can get something that becomes more urban form. Again, part of this thing is not being so prescriptive from the government side, but to try and set of rules. You build this form, you can put as much density in the types of uses that you want for the most part. It's a different way than we normally approach zoning in our
Can I
community.
tag on to that, though? I think Lonnie made a really good point, though, about the density needs to relate to the street. So the taller your buildings, the wider you need your sidewalks to be, because otherwise you get that cavern effect. So it's kind of like if you need to link that this is not a boulevard, I don't know, an avenue or something, whatever it is. I can't really relate the widths of these in my mind, but yeah, it would need to somehow tie into like, these are the higher density areas because you have more room to walk along them without feeling constrained.
Maybe I can. So as an organizing framework, obviously that's how streets are used in many places, so it makes sense. However, so the key that Mr. Barnes has mentioned, not being too prescriptive. So because we don't know necessarily, so for instance, Fashion Square Mall, that's an area where you could see significant density. And you may wind up with one of these larger streets through there to accommodate that density and be able to have street trees and pedestrian walkway. And you want people to encourage, so you want wide sidewalks, because if you have stores and you have a number of things, maybe you have multi-use, or you have apartments above, and so you're going to need wider sidewalks, wider streets. So we need to have flexibility, to build in the flexibility in here, and I think that's going to be the tricky part. in how you develop that. I think we all agree this is probably fine as an organization strategy, but it's the devil's in the detail.
And I think maybe, you know, again, I wanted to make sure we had this opportunity to have these two work sessions. So we tried to like, I'm happy, I think what we'll probably do, my last question is, what do you want us to talk about next time? And this is obviously one of the things, making sure we get that spatial enclosure right, make sure we've got the ideas of the streets and what we're proposing in that template meet some of the things that you all's experience would help.
Well, and make sure that that you're setting up the infrastructure that promotes or encourages the higher density, particularly in those three zones that you called out. I mean, those are ripe for the higher density, right? And certainly the Fashion Square Mall, this is the largest one.
I guess I'm still struggling with, I understand form-based code. I'm struggling with how we incentivize people to come in and put in the type of density structures, diversity of uses that we want without the county doing something about the street network. It just, like, it needs to be master planned,
Right.
and I don't really understand.
We're struggling with it
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure, like, not, you don't have to answer this now, but I'd love to see another example where this was done that.
Without the street network in place already.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I don't see, because also the street network has to connect out to the other, this really needs a,
And,
I don't get it. I'm sorry. I
and-
can't see, I'm like here and I get the end result and I'm stuck in how we're.
Yeah,
gonna do that.
if I could address that
Yeah.
part real quick. This was always going to be a challenging place to do form-based code. It is built for cars. Everything is surrounded by parking. It's behind parking. It has parking behind it. It's just seas of parking. 39% of this district is parking lot or paved area. So this was always going to be a challenging place. And you're right, most form-based codes come into areas that the streets are already kind of built, and when they're recommending new streets, they kind of are just connecting streets that exist that are currently disconnected. So I think this is a challenge, and we are struggling with incentives to be able to encourage development. I think one of the things with denoting core areas was being able to say to the developer, we see you as a destination, and we think you, and they want that too. So there's some overlap of intention behind these designations. In terms of building out new streets, I think one of the things that we have to realize is that we have a code in effect now, and it's not quite working very well. So this part of this effort is to make it work. It will still have those struggles, and I think we'll need to talk through that more, and they might be policy oriented versus regulation. So maybe we have those two discussions at different times.
And finally, I think you did that well. And I think finally, we talk about new streets. I think the one that the county is most trying to solve how to make work is a realignment of Hillsdale.
Yeah.
That would come into Fashion Square,
Right.
cross over Rio and tie into Albemarle Square. We can build that piece of sort of connecting tissue, if you will, then I think it's a possibility that a lot of these other streets can sort of fill in with a destination in the local streets as might be best by whomever is taking on that risk to do that development.
Okay.
Well, and my last thought is when it comes to having the street type be the framework, are you then inviting too much not form? So basically the developer might say, well, I don't want to have to meet this requirement, so I'm going to call it an avenue, or, basically they have an option to build a different road in order to not meet whatever requirement we want to put on them.
In some ways, but I think in other ways, the development that goes first kind of has more, they have more ability, a greater ability to decide what kind of street that's going to be. And then the next developer has to continue the street. I don't think we're going to ever see a street that goes from avenue to boulevard to local street. That's just not something that
Sure.
would be approvable. So there's a continuation of a design, and the first development in gets to choose that direction. So I think in this, there's an emphasis on where are the most impactful accesses that we are encouraging pedestrian travel. And then once you get to those smaller blocks that are 400 feet or less, that's if you're looking in your mind as an example of what is a 400-foot linear block size, it's about the size of the longest length of the Water Street garage. So that is something that's walkable. It's you can progress through a district and feel comfortable in that kind of scale. So, Michael.
The only last thing I'd say, thank you. You know, our last question is, what do you all want to talk about next time? We all have some things we want to talk about. So part of this is the relationship with the cross section of the street. The next one is sort of how does it get administered? And we have thought about that in the code. There is a little bit of latitude, a little bit the agent can sort of like hold back on some of the stuff. Another challenge we're going to have is public and private streets. And part of that's going to be driven by what we can get VDOT to accept as a public street. We'll get into all of that next week, or when we come back to talk to you. But your insight is good because you're like, well, how are we going to make sure that this network actually functions? As if you're gonna like allow it to a developer to come into you, propose what he thinks or she thinks works best. What control do we still retain to verify and agree on that? We can talk about that next time.
Do we all feel kind of ready to keep going? Okay, great. So shifting away from streets and back to the proposed zoning map, in addition to the character areas, the zoning map identified where certain types of publicly accessible recreation space, also known as civic space in the code, are required. So I know you've seen this map before, but in these maps, the civic spaces are identified with black dots, and the required linear parks, which are a type of civic space, are shown as black lines. Several changes have been made in the proposed map. The first change aligns required civic spaces with known development plans or guidance from Albemarle County's Parks and Recreation Department. The result was the removal of 3 civic spaces circled on the left and adjusting the locations of 2 others shown with arrows. Second, the proposed map also revises the types of civic spaces to align required civic spaces with the revised design standards. And lastly, the proposed map recommends a new linear park space along the northern boundary of the Albemarle Square property to extend and connect the planned linear parks in that area. So this addition is consistent with the recommendations of the Route 29 small area plan. And I just want to be clear, by removing these spaces, we haven't removed the requirement for recreation. It just gives the developers opting in on those properties more flexibility regarding the location and the type of civic space that would be required. So on that note, again, every development that opts into the form-based code is required to provide a recreation space. With the first few developments, particularly one with smaller recreation space requirements, we realize that the current regulation, which requires all recreation spaces to be dedicated to the county, could result in a county maintenance of around 60 individual and dispersed recreation spaces. This obviously creates an operational and maintenance challenge and risks the long-term quality of the spaces. So recognizing the importance of recreation spaces, we didn't want to lose that aspect, but we needed to find a way to balance how recreation space is provided and its quality. So the proposed change offers an alternative approach wherein recreation spaces that are 1 acre or more in size would be dedicated to the county. Required recreation spaces that are 1 acre or less would be privately owned and maintained. This approach concentrates county ownership and maintenance on larger, higher impact sites and could result in theoretically 20 spaces that the county would maintain. But that would be if every property opted into the Route 29 form-based code. We think this approach would provide a suitable distribution of public recreation spaces in 3 out of,
So a problem that I've seen occur in other areas where they have a public space that the developer is implied to the public, well, this is green space, there's open space. And we hear this a lot. There's a lot of uncertainty about what is green space and what's not green space. I can see definitely for larger areas, dedicating those properties to the county for the county to own and maintain. But there's a middle ground there too, where I think we could be using easements. So that they may be still owned by the HOA, but we should have a county easement on them so that we control the destiny of those spaces.
Easement that is a trail access or something like that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, even like, if you have a, if, let's say you have your 1 acre, community garden or whatever, I think it's still worthwhile for the county to have an easement on that 1 acre garden that says like, this is dedicated green space, so that if at some point, if you still have a developer controlled HOA, and the developer turns around and say, actually, I want to put an apartment building there. That we still have, we still have a stake in that space.
Well, I think, I'm sorry to cut you off. So one aspect is the easement for access temporarily until a redevelopment occurs. In that scenario, it allows the developer to redevelop however that develop, or whatever the uses might say is most relevant for the or the recreation space that most fits the use going in on the property. That gives the developer some flexibility, and especially as the property turns over time. It does not, however, negate their their requirement to provide a recreation space. Excuse me, it's late. So they would still be required to have a recreation space on that property. It doesn't waive that requirement, but it gives them the flexibility as it develops in the future.
Yeah, I hear that, and yet I think that, there's a certainty that's provided by putting things under easement that I think you don't get by just simply, because I think as board of supervisors change and time goes by, and, I think it provides a certainty that can be lost. And you can see that in other neighborhoods and other communities.
People come in for rezoning and then they want to build on that or change their proper or something.
Exactly. And then, then you have a certainty, like say, oh yeah, we have an easement on this. So it carries weight. That's not the same as, that, oh, well, you had a special use permit or you had a rezoning. This was a part of that. It carries more weight.
It's interesting that the discussion went that direction. From me, my vantage point of coming in and looking at this was under the current ordinance, you see, we could end up with 60 publicly maintained open spaces. Yes, that would give you a lot of control over it if they're publicly owned and maintained. And I think there was sort of a pragmatic realization that if we have to have 60 spaces in here, and we want to try and do the same form-based code, maybe in some of the other activity centers that we've planned, it starts to multiply on itself the number of public spaces that might need to be maintained. The previous code, when they sort of set that up, the commitment to maintaining those maybe wasn't quite as clear or was well thought through at the time. So we spent a lot of time working with the Parks Department, sort of like, how do we sort of try and right size this thing? And interestingly enough, we sort of gone down on the number of what we envisioned to be publicly owned spaces. And as a result, we still think we need some recreation. That's why we have this second category to try and people that are, required to have less than an acre. Well, there's going to be a privately maintained open space. And if you're really small, you can do cash in lieu and buy out completely. So, but the idea was to have these public spaces be public parks. And in some respects, that was to try and like get to that statement we've heard through AC 44 and others that the county needs to have a more robust urban park system. And so that's really kind of where we were going with this, Mr. Murray. And it's interesting what you've brought it into is, well, in this middle category that's less than 1 acre, should we be putting an easement over top of it to ensure that either, I guess, maybe the public has access or that the developer at a certain point can't go into a different type of zoning district or rezone their property to get rid of that open space. I'm less worried about that last thing. I think that the code will require those open spaces, and I think that's what Mariah was trying to say. The real focus here, I think, is it's interesting of us trying to like hit that spot where we're, as a county, if we talk about incentives, part of this is the incentives of having a publicly owned park and maintained park in the middle of one of these developments.
Well, I'm just saying there's a middle ground between the county owning and the developer owning. And so I think that that you may just consider there's multiple models in there that you could accommodate. That's sort of what I'm saying.
Okay.
I do think too, one of the nice things the comprehensive plan gives us, one of the changes we put in there was the ability for as I think you just implied, the developer to contribute to a parks fund in lieu of providing, a pocket park. And I think that that's a tool I think could be really beneficial in terms of flexibility in some of these spaces. Sometimes sometimes the individual piece being rezoned at that moment is not where you need the sidewalk. So the contribution to a parks fund could get you where we actually want the greenway or we want the larger park to go.
There's certainly leeway in it. Just to address one point, once a property opts into the form-based code, it cannot redevelop under a different zoning district. It is opted into the form-based code permanently.
Yeah, true.
So I don't think we would really be dealing with so much of developers coming back and changing their land uses to get rid of recreation spaces. Just to highlight that last year, we retained the option to provide a cash in lieu of recreation spaces, recognizing that it might be challenging for those smaller parcels to provide recreation spaces on the site, and funds that are contributed to that, as you said, Mr. Murray, would be used for district-wide recreation investments. Just wanted to make that point.
I think the cash in lieu option could be very valuable.
Can I ask for clarification on that? The required size is not the parcel development size, it's the size of the space required.
Correct.
So theoretically, what size parcel would have a less than a 0.3 acre recreation requirement?
I think it was in the staff report, but it depends on what character area you're in. The
Okay.
recreation space requirement is controlled by character area. So in a core character area, it would be 10% of the available land. And if that 10% is less than 0.3 acres,
Got it.
then
So it's a percentage.
Yeah, right.
Understood. That makes more sense. Thank you. In general, I'm in favor of having the 1 acre or more be publicly maintained. I think that's a smart decision. I'd actually be in favor of having, not in form-based code area, but in other developments, like was mentioned earlier, more of that type of dedication, where the developer actually develops the recreation to its full potential and then hands it over to us for maintenance, right? So an actual urban park that they build, and then we get, the public gets forever use of.
Okay. So it sounds like there is support. What do other commissioners think?
Let me just clarify this. This wouldn't preclude somebody from having, a small pocket park or something, right?
No,
They don't-
no, it would just require private maintenance of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, because I used to work near that area and one of the, right on 29, and there was just no place to go out and sit and have a sandwich, And if you focus too much on the like bigger park, but the bigger park is 7 blocks from your office and you just want to go out and have a cup of coffee, it's hard to get to that outdoor space. And the shops at Stonefield, like we're using that as a model, but they don't have anything like that.
They have one space towards the back of the.
Yeah,
pro-
but they're
towards the
planning
back
to
of
build
the-
on that. That is
Correct,
not
yeah.
that is not a dedicated space in any shape or form.
I think she meant
Okay.
farther back. They have a small space. Agreed. The one.
Way in the back? How
Yeah.
far?
So there are some spread
I
around.
think you just made my point.
Yeah, I think to your point.
Yeah.
The green space that you see there today, decent sized plaza, and I think that's kind of what we have in our mind. When
Yeah.
we're like, actually, this acre or more. That is about that space. So, yeah, if somebody was to come in and do Shops of Stonefield up at one of these malls, we'd look for that kind of what you see at Shops of Stonefield right now to be a, public plaza or public green.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking of the shops at Stonefield as it exists now and how people use that space, but yes, it is slated for development.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the balance that I would like to see us do a better job achieving is, I mean, sometimes what a neighborhood wants is a little pocket park where they can do something. But it seems like we build a lot of pocket parks that aren't really.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of
used.
dumb pocket parks. There's a lot there. There's
It's
one
like-
out right side of this building
That's a
with a
quote.
bench where you can sit in the traffic triangle. There's a bench there. Let's all go recreate for the next meeting. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of bad ones out in the world. So I'm sure that this wouldn't have any of those type of things, right? Anyway, we can keep going.
Okay. Feedback from the development community, architects, designers, all express a desire for greater flexibility in the form-based code to better accommodate site-specific challenges. In follow-up meetings, participants expressed support for administrative approval of modifications, noting that this approach could reduce application costs and enable quicker reviews and approval of site plans. And those efficiencies were identified as a key advantage of development under the form-based code, which we want to continue encouraging. So in the proposed changes, we're recommending 25 agent-approved modifications and waivers if specified criteria are met. And expanded board-approved special exceptions from 6 to 10 within the code and all to address site-specific constraints. All of the proposed modifications, waivers, and special exceptions were carefully considered by staff so that they don't undermine the ability to achieve a cohesive urban development pattern consistent with the vision of the Rio 29 Small Area Plan. In particular, staff intentionally avoided providing administrative flexibility for elements central to the plan's goals, such as the provision of recreation space, or issues where more direction from the Board of Supervisors is needed to establish that clear approval criteria, such as alternative affordable housing unit mixes or area median income thresholds. Getting to the organization formatting, this is our last one. Feedback from on the form-based code was that it was difficult to navigate and it was inconsistent with the county's current effort in the zoning ordinance modernization. So the proposed changes align with the zoning ordinance modernization effort, consolidate requirements through formatting or new sections, and they also reorder the sections to align with information that's needed at conceptual planning and development review stages and reflect the Rio 29 small area plans emphasis on streets and recreation spaces. So this is an example of ways that we reformatted those requirements to have them all in one place and avoid that cross-referencing throughout the sections. This is our last question. You've mentioned as through the progression of this discussion, a couple of things that would be of interest, like the streets. Are there other sections or aspects of the revised code that the Planning Commission would like staff to focus on in our next meeting as we talk about the regulatory and technical changes? We made a lot of changes, so we made about 50 pages worth. So are there aspects that you would like us to hit or broach a little more thoroughly than others?
How about one of the streetscapes being specifically a green streetscape?
She said.
Because, and what I mean by that is not just trees, but low impact development, walkable. Yeah, like it's been, I wanted to see like something really progressive, and maybe there is an incentive tied to doing that street as a green street.
We did try to
Like
make
you've done it, like the county has done in Crozet. by the library.
And to be clear, is that something that you're thinking about is, another sort of option that we would put into it?
Yes, yeah, an option, not that you would require it. I understand what form-based code is. But like I was, when I'm looking at your streets, me, Mariah, I'm like, where's the recessed section? Where's the bioswale along that's capturing, like if you don't draw it or just.
I did actually put a bioswale in
Yeah,
one of
I
them.
saw there was one recessed area, but I was like, come on, give me some more.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, I do think there's room to require some, and, if we're providing something here, I think there's room to up the standard in terms of stormwater management.
We have this massively paved area, and as you know, if your new development does not exceed the impervious surface of the prior development, you don't have to add stormwater management. So how do we get ahead? How do we get some of these features put in by the private sector? And so, for example, if you lose a couple of parking spaces, you can make a good bioswale in there, right? You change, I don't know if the whole form-based code exempts you from parking, but I'd have to refresh my brain, but I think there could be some other greener incentives in here. I know you're going to work on that next time, but I'd like to see it in the streetscape, what's called a complete green street.
Well, let me do two things for you.
Sure.
First of all, come back next time, because the point of the next meeting is to look through the code that you also had just received. There isn't a green street in there, so I can't really go over that with you next time, because, we're sort of look at that. So, we can sort of pick out things we're trying to do that allow for, better stormwater, or, point that out in the ordinance. But I will say, even as somebody who's, supports that stuff, it's limited in this code. And I'll explain why. This is a tough thing to do. It's a tough place to redevelop. The land is, has its rent already, and we're going to try and change its form into something more difficult. I do worry about, trying to make something that, sort of tries to be flexible and allow for the development community to come in there, and B, adding lots of other things that cost money that don't actually pay rent.
These are incentives, right? So I worked with some developers in Charlottesville on an infill code that if they got a density bonus of 50% for doing green features, and people did it.
There's no density.
So,
There's no,
yeah,
but
I'm just saying.
density bonuses don't work in this district,
Yeah.
because there is no such thing as, you got a max height of your building. But there's
Well,
no, there's no,
you
there's,
do have density. You had a bonus for affordable housing.
We did a bonus story.
Right.
bonus
So when I
building
read that,
story.
I was like, where's my green rooftop
Right.
density? I want my green rooftop.
Yeah,
I mean, we could do those types of things, but I guess
Right.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
gently sort of
I
recognize.
understand. You don't want us to put so much stuff in here that becomes like
I
a
wanted to be
requirement.
that carrot,
Yeah.
right? And if I keep adding and adding to the carrot, or, make it becomes more of
Well,
a beat, and no one likes beets.
Green carrots in here.
So-
Need green carrots.
Well, one of the
So-
things that we did add was a new requirement for a tree canopy requirement in parking lot areas. So I think there are different ways we're coming at introducing those green aspects and making the sites more resilient without really complicating the administrative or dissuading development. One of the things that we've done in this revision of the form-based code was partner with Jamie Powers on the climate action plan. And we did a site visit and drive around the area and kind of explaining the challenges that we're having and also the goals of the climate action plan. So he and I are working together to identify, what areas are really kind of encouraging both and working with the climate action plan to make this area more resilient. Maybe there are more things that we can do, but we will cover that topic.
And the last thing I would say is, under the current stormwater regulations, these sites are close to 100% impervious. So the post to pre things are limited, and talking a little bit with county engineer about what we would have to do to try and change the curb numbers on this, or to reduce impacts to streams. It's going to be tough to require that under current regulations. And, these are some of the realities, right? And so it kind of comes back to, that I word of incentives.
Yeah.
Now, some of them we can provide by giving an extra floor on the building, but probably the real things come of where does the public sector want to try and help push that policy in? And be honest, staff sort of didn't go that way on green infrastructure.
Yeah, and I'll just say this really quick. Fairfax County introduced, can't remember, it was like a half a penny or a penny on their property taxes to create a fund to put in green infrastructure on private property, on private development to help the county reduce the load on local streams. And the county built them and the private sector helps maintain them, but they did hundreds of those. I'm just saying there are models out there for local government and it was very, very popular. So,
And with all due respect, I mean, I think these things could happen on a countywide scale, or, what we could do is policy that would affect all parcels within the development area or within the county, or is one thing. And of course, we're trying to work on an ordinance in itself that's trying to target the redevelopment of a very small area relative to speaking to the rest of the county.
So what I really see form-based code has the potential to do is by highlighting the features that if we can highlight the features that we see as the ideal design. And like, we're not going to drag them kicking and screaming to build that.
No.
We say, here's, if you build this is something that we all agree with. We will be great with, we're great if you build this. But I think there's a tier there where we say, listen, you've not only sort of met the base requirements of this, but you've gone into the exceed category.
Right.
And I think that's where maybe we have policies like, you automatically qualify for tax increment financing. Or, you automatically, qualify for this built-in incentive. And that's where I think we can really make some big differences. But I will say that in terms of, I believe very strongly that how we manage stormwater and landscape really impacts the quality of life and the quality of design. You look at an area that's managing stormwater well, it's way more livable than an area that's managing stormwater poorly. And
yeah, and
if you get that wrong.
if I'm a patron, and I get to pick to go to the green district where people did a lot of green practices, there is a market for that. Where I will personally pick to go to the mall that has green stormwater management. I might sound like a nerd, but it's also beautiful. I mean, we create more beautiful landscapes. We're not talking about tanks buried under a parking lot that no one sees. We're talking about, I have an assignment in one of my classes. I make, it's called Stormwater as Art. And it's public art installations that treat stormwater. So there are a lot of things. Anyway, we don't want to take up the whole night with this, but I think you can maybe get the vibe that some of us feel pretty strongly about trying to do more with this than simply trying to transform the shopping mall to a pedestrianized area. Because it's just not enough necessarily. Anyway.
I'd just like to recognize that I think what the Board of Supervisors voted on were some clear amendments to the form-based code to solve some actual problems that we were having implementing the code, and that's what we're here to discuss, right? So revamping the whole code and starting from scratch with new ideas sounds good, but it's not necessarily what we're supposed to be talking about.
I don't think we proposed that.
No?
Nope, because we've been asked for the next session, what are the things we'd like to see and that they didn't have a chance to get into some of those green elements for next time. So that's what Mariah said at the beginning. That was that some of that green infrastructure stuff was not completed by county staff. It was not because developers, nobody wanted to see it. It was they just didn't get the work done. So we're coming back at it and we have to fix all these other things. But I think what we've heard tonight is some of us think we need more incentives up there to make this code go. So that we're not sitting here in 2.5, 3 years with the staff saying, wow, those didn't really advance the ball. What else can we do? So yeah, I don't see anything in here that I disagreed with in your presentation about improvements. It all sounds good to me. I'm
But
just
there,
trying to
there are
push it a
some,
little.
there are
farther.
some fundamental shifts,
Yeah.
right? So just reconceiving on how we think about the nature of that corridor, of that form base, I don't know, what do you call it? The Rio Road and the intersections of Rio and 29 as the center of, of that precinct versus looking at it in chunks or districts. So that's conceptually, it's a very, very different approach. So, and I think it lends itself to how you market it, how you bring in economic development. Mr. Barnes, I'm going to send you some information on how malls have been transformed throughout the country and even in the eastern. It's very interesting, and it's usually P3 initiatives that we've talked about before.
Maybe
And
you should
so,
send that to all of us.
yeah, I will. And interesting enough, a lot of them involve around healthcare as well. And we're a community of 50,000 in terms of the city of Charlottesville with a major academic medical center in it, which is very rare, actually. There's only probably about a couple of other places like that in the country. So there's opportunities. So I'll send you that. It's an interesting read and how they develop. So they've taken old malls that are and then revitalized them with all kinds of use. So I'll send that to you, to all of us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll just close this out for this. And I think your point, Supervisor or Commissioner King, is a good one. I think we're trying to thread the needle and not recommending things that are too far beyond the scope of the project and new to the form-based code generally, but we are trying to solve these known issues that with regulations that we have now, and also encouraging the code that we have so that it is used by developers. And we also have this time constraint. We have a lot of developers that are really interested in using the code. They have developments that they're ready to move forward with, and they're waiting on us to have a code that they can develop under. So there are a couple of tensions, and we're trying to make the code as usable and friendly as possible so that we can get those developments going and rolling that encourage more developments after them. But thank you so much for your time, especially for staying late. I know my pet has a bedtime that he encourages himself to do. So thank you so much for allowing us to come tonight, and we will be here next time as well.
May I say one last thing? I'm sorry. So if there are some other things you reflect on looking at the code over the next week or so, feel free to reach out to us. Hey, wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about some element there. The last thing, Mr. Carazana, I'm simpatico with what you're talking about. Again, our mission we felt was a bit smaller. I would encourage you to talk with the electeds that you represent and work with to see if they do want to talk about these bigger ideas. I know there was talk about it during AC 44, and so I think that's how change happens. We're not pushing that change from our spot with this particular initiative.
I won't just be talking to you about it.
Cheers.
And thank you, Ms. Gleason, for the presentation.
Thanks.
Committee reports. Nothing over the
Nothing
holidays.
has happened.
Mr. Barnes, Board of Supervisors, January 7th.
So it was their organization meeting where they elected chair and vice chair. The chair is leaving the room right now, Mr. Galloway, and
Chair.
and Fred Missel was nominated to be the vice chair. So that was the basic thrust of that meeting. And the meeting before that was actually previous to our last meeting. So this is the only report I have for you.
Great. Old business, new business, any business? No business?
When is the riparian buffer ordinance coming?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. You should have gotten an email today with it.
Oh, okay.
There was an email.
Yeah, and I really apologize. I meant to bring that in my notes. And, you know, I'm trying to get you all things like weighty documents like this a little bit in advance so that you have more time than a week to read them. So it's coming back in our next work session. We'll be talking about that. And we'll be talking about the second part of the form-based code. But Carolyn emailed you, that ordinance in the staff report today.
Okay, great. I just didn't see it.
And welcome to Commissioner King.
Thank you.
All right. With that, let's see, where's our date?
All the boards.
Where is our date?
Usually says at the
The
end of
January
the-
20, I know I can't say it. It's January 27th, right?
Yes, it's at the bottom there, Mr. Garzano.